same way for years. It was going to take some time for people to learn the hard way that you can't do what James Harrison used to do to people every year.
Yeah, it's right. We're past all that, though. These kids, one should be getting taught that.
Yes,
from
they've been
the coaches,
getting taught that way through high school now.
and be taught that you can't do that anymore. And so, yes, it's still going to happen, even with the rule, as we know. But I just think that so many times we're seeing, because that is a perfect example of that one. Yes, you can't do that, especially to the quarterback. Like, especially to the quarterback, you cannot do that. But the other one, the Montgomery one, I don't know how you avoid. If you're playing tackle football, I don't know how you get away from doing what he did. The running back lowered his head. He lowered his head. It looked like he was trying to make a clean tackle, and their helmets touched. I don't know what you want him to do in that play. I really don't. I mean, help me understand what he's supposed to do. Is this yet again? And by the way, how many times have we seen this? Because players are smart, and because of the rules. Okay, so everything is supposed to be around the legs now, and now what do we see guys doing constantly? The college football level, high school level, the pro level. What are they doing now? They're jumping over people. Why? Because they know they're going for the legs.
Right.
Because they're being taught that because of these rules that we're talking about. Some guys are scared to tackle anything up high because they're afraid they're going to get hit with targeting or a penalty.
Well, and they've also got, especially with quarterbacks, they have penalties if you go for the legs. I mean, because of Pollard hitting Brady. I mean, you got that stuff of going for the legs like that. So again, I understand player safety and I'm all about it, but you also people have to understand that it's a dangerous game. I mean, it just is. You are tackling people full on. It's like getting hit by a truck every play is the old cliche that they use. I think they know the risks when they sign up to play the game. And, unfortunately, you're going to get hurt sometimes. There are going to be injuries. You can't prevent everything. And so I think you have to, while trying to make the game safer, you also have to try and preserve, that it is football. And that's what it is. And we can't have flag football, that's what it becomes. So it's a fine line for sure, but they got to figure this out because it's just I hate this rule.
And Darren, you said the Matrix. I actually, after the blowout happened, I switched over and watched Beverly Hills Cop 2, which I hadn't watched in a long time. I enjoyed it.
When did you give up again? At what point?
Well, Louisville had the ball. Louisville had the ball to start the second half and kicked the field goal, and then Ole Miss came down and scored. Once Corral ran it in there, I was like, okay, I'm moving on. And so BHC 2, good sequel, enjoyable. Eddie Murphy in his prime.
Sure.
I was on it, and I was entertained the rest of the night. I called it a night after that.
I think this is an interesting text that I just read on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Jim says, I think with respect to targeting, they should go to a yellow card, red card system, much like soccer. Second violation gets you kicked out.
I'm okay with that.
I think I would be totally fine with that.
I'm not opposed to that.
That's a good discussion.
And they could basically, like, if they review a penalty in soccer and they see that, okay, it's egregious, like you're cleating a guy, it's an automatic red.
Yeah,
you're out.
It's a red. Yeah, go right to the red.
Yeah, no, that's right. You have the right to skip.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm fine. Review every play. I do like that they added that a few years ago, because remember once they called it, you're gone. There was no.
Yeah, you didn't even review it.
Yeah, now they review it.
But if it's targeting, you're still thrown out, right?
It's still thrown out. You're still thrown out. But no matter what, it's a 15-yard penalty. Like
Correct.
If they call it, it's a 15-yard penalty.
Correct. I think there needs to add a level. I think.
I'm
I
totally
agree.
fine with that.
A lot of people are saying that.
So the yellow card principle would be.
And
I like that.
Do they have to do it just like the soccer refs? Do they have to go right up next to the kid?
Oh, I think that would be
awesome.
That would be sacrilegious to some football people and soccer people. But that would be pretty amazing if they did do that, where they flash the card.
Yeah. No, I mean that's what I'm asking. Do you do it that way? I mean, I'm okay with that. No.
It is like it's kind of fun to watch a
like
soccer ref.
That's like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters.
Yeah. But I mean, it's all like I appreciate the refs that like in basketball that you got a flashy ref and he's about to tee you up and he's just standing there and he's like he's listening to you and he's nodding his head and then he just bam.
Yeah.
And like there are soccer refs that just go bam.
And back when managers used to argue with umpires that they rarely do anymore.
Like it's happening.
Go ahead, keep talking.
Hand on the
you
hips.
Want more?
Hand on the hips, and then they'll wind up. And you're out.
Do they have a yellow flag and a red flag that they could actually pull a red flag out and throw it onto the field?
See? Well, you got the red beanbag, though, so you don't want to get...
Well, you can change the color of that, though.
No, I mean,
Could.
maybe. We could workshop this.
We can work on this,
Okay.
They have all kinds of turnover props that, are pretty crazy, so you could come up with some sort of prop.
The ejection chain.
The ejection chain. I like it. We must break because we're coming back with Paul Feinbaum, our weekly chat with him. But right now I'm going to tell you about the first Sunday of the NFL season. We know it's here. The NFL is about to kick off, and the excitement continues with DraftKings Sportsbook. The official sports betting partner of the NFL, DraftKings is giving all new customers a can't-miss offer to celebrate the return of the NFL season. Yes, you just bet $1 on any football game this weekend and receive $200 in free bets instantly, no matter what. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving all new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they bet at least $1 on any football game. DraftKings is safe, reliable, and secure, making it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code 1025GAME and receive $200 in free bets when you place $1 bet on any game this week in the NFL. That promo code again, 1025GAME. Get your free $200 bets, $200 in free bets instantly this week. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Remember, you must be 21 years of age or older. Tennessee only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, presented by Rashawn CBD. Rashawn CBD products curated for life. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic, Chase McCabe with you here on this Tuesday morning. Hope everyone is having a good start to your day. Paul Feinbaum, brought to you by MTGRT.com. Your live and local mortgage expert is on the line with us. Paul, good morning. Thanks for doing this. As always, we're going to have you join into our conversation that we had in the first segment of the show today and yesterday's show, because it continued last night in the Louisville Ole Miss game. What do you think ultimately, or let me phrase it this way, do you think college football has a problem on their hands with the targeting rule?
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be talking about it today, but we are. And,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not a rules expert, and neither are you guys, and but we've all talked to enough of them, and I just don't know how you solve it. I mean, it's so subjective, and it's so punitive. I mean, I understand the intent, but then every time we talk to a rules expert, they make sure we know why the rule is there, but it just always seems to destroy the flow of the game and impact the game.
Do you think ultimately because, I mean, we talked about the three of us were together on Saturday. We were doing a fantasy football draft. We were watching the Penn State-Wisconsin game. There was some bad targeting calls, in our opinion, and there that took out some key players. Joe Klatt was going crazy on the rule. Kirk Herbstreit was massaging it a little bit better than Joel did on Saturday, but still both basically saying that they've got to do something about it. Do you think if the announcers, if the broadcast crew continues to say stuff throughout the course of the season, that might force their hand, or no?
Yeah. What I think is going to be interesting is whether you'll continue to hear the announcers talking about it, and I say that because I know how network television works. So it's important that those guys are arguably the two most influential voices on a game that you can get. So they were heard, and what happens is the average fan who couldn't explain the rule in a million years hears that and go, "This must be a stupid rule." So that's positive. Now we'll see what Steve Shaw is a friend of mine, used to be a neighbor. He's the head of the officials for the entire country. Let's see what he has to say about it now.
Yeah, good point. Your takeaway last night, did the worst defense in the country last year massively improve in Ole Miss, or was Louisville's offense, do they just stink? Or is it a little bit of both? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question Ole Miss got better, because, I mean, they were giving points and yards last year to nearly average teams. But I am almost hesitant to make too many value judgments on anything I see this year against the ACC. Because it was such an embarrassing weekend for that league, and you don't know really where to go. Where is Louisville rank? I mean, not very high. So I give Ole Miss credit. I mean, they're going. We knew they were going to be a great offensive team. We just didn't think they could stop anyone. They did stop, an average team last night, which is more than they did last year. So I think that is a significant moment for that program.
Saturday night, watched out in L.A., watched UCLA have their way for the most part, really. I thought they were the better team. They deserved to win over LSU. What does this mean for Ed Orgeron and the Tigers moving forward, that loss to the Bruins?
It puts them in dire straits. And I know that sounds absurd on the day after Labor Day, but you look at they had to win their 4 games, and most LSU fans figured that was a win, and the only games that they were conceding were probably Alabama and maybe at Texas A&M, and now everything is in play. We're talking about a game in 2 weeks from Saturday in Starkville as a critical game, and that shows you how tenuous Ed Orgeron's life raft is, and I don't like to pile on a program that, like so many people in this country, have suffered badly because of this hurricane a week ago, but we're talking football here. And, struggle or no struggle, bad week of practice or no bad week, it was another embarrassing opener for a guy whose credibility is being shattered by the game.
Yeah. We also discussed this yesterday, Paul. I don't know what they can do about it. I feel like they're trying. In 2016, they played USC to start their season. They beat them 52-6. In 2017, they played Florida State, beat them 24-7. I mean, that's compared to the Miami-Florida game. That's pretty good. The next year, they played Louisville, beat them 51-14. Smoked Duke the next year. Obviously, there was no out-of-conference game last year. We talked about, I think it was 2012. They played Michigan. I mean, they're trying, but is there any game Alabama could schedule that's going to, they look good on paper to start the season, but they end up not being games?
No, and there's almost nothing left. The only, you could have put them against Clemson or Ohio State or Oklahoma, but quite frankly, we've seen these games already.
Yep.
I think at this moment, Alabama is in a different league, and we had question marks. The question marks were very simple. Could Bryce Young adapt without the same complement of first-round picks that Mac Jones had last year? The answer, yes. Now, back to a previous statement. What's Miami? I mean, they were a ranked team. They were supposed to be good. They weren't against Alabama. But there's just almost no way to know until you see Alabama play a really good team. And the good news, that comes soon. That comes a week from Saturday. Alabama's schedule is very top-heavy this year. They play at the Swamp a week from this Saturday, and then in 5 weeks they play at Texas A&M. That's when we'll know for sure, but I think we already do.
You know what's interesting is for a long time we kept trying to figure out, who is it? Is it Bill Belichick or is it Tom Brady? Who's really behind basically a dynasty run for almost 2 decades? Well, it may still be a little premature, and maybe there isn't a right answer. Maybe it was the combination of both. But Tom Brady went away and he won the Super Bowl, and Bill Belichick didn't even make the playoffs. And who knows if Mac Jones changes that narrative this year. But with what you just said, because you're right, they're just different than everybody else, Alabama. I mean, it's amazing. But they don't have that same quarterback for almost 2 decades. Like, they change players all the time, and I get it. They keep bringing in 5-star, but Nick Saban is the best ever. But what is it truly? How have they been able to sustain this type of dynasty run for this long in college football?
At some point, in the age of the CFP, we have seen just a handful of teams who now profit, and they're the same ones that we see in the playoffs every year. And Alabama has just mastered it a little bit better. The amount of great players that are going there is higher than it's been at any time. I mean, you could pick your poison. Maybe 10, 12 years ago, Saban's first recruiting class was epic with Julio Jones and other players. But now they are literally going out and choosing players, and they're making the right choice. And the most important position, let me sound like every analyst in the world, is the quarterback position, and they haven't missed. Jalen Hurts was a legitimate quarterback. He got replaced by an even better guy, and you can debate whether Mac Jones was even better. He wasn't really even anybody Alabama wanted badly. He was just somebody that, they mildly recruited, and he decided, I want to go there. Bryce Young was in the same class with some of the top players we have right now, and it just, he's developed. You've got great coordinators. Say what you want about O'Brien, but as an NFL head coach, but he's certainly adept at the system. And the biggest change for Alabama that we saw for the first 3 quarters, and I think we'll see most of the year, is the defense. Nick Saban has not had an elite defense in probably 9-10 years, and we think he has that now. And you can afford losses. Every school suffers losses. The first couple of weeks of the season, Alabama lost a linebacker the other day. They can afford it, and not many other schools can.
We're talking to Paul Feinbaum, and once again, he's brought to you by mtgrt.com, your live and local mortgage expert. So, Paul, I'm desperately looking for new blood here, but I don't know if you're going to tell me that there is any. We've already mentioned, we know Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, the usual suspects. Is there any new blood that could jump in there and have a great season and be in this mix?
You could see Iowa State. They have a huge game this weekend. Cincinnati or a couple of schools, Texas A&M. But we just don't know yet. And even if they make it, does it really matter? I think is the better question.
Yes.
And if you look at a snapshot of 1 week, and I think it's dangerous, but hey, what are we supposed to do? That's all we have as a sample. There look like two elite teams right now, and that's Alabama and Georgia. And Georgia didn't even play. I mean, Georgia played a miserable offensive game, but that's all they needed to do. Kirby Smart, with a number of wide receivers and tight ends out, and a couple of other players, he gambled. He said, "You know what? I'm going to try to win this game on defense." It worked out because Clemson's offense was a total mess against an elite defense, which they don't play normally. When you beat up on Wake Forest and Boston College and Syracuse as your daily ACC diet, you get fat in a hurry.
This is something that I thought about, and I don't know if I'm just making too much of a couple featured games, because Wisconsin-Penn State, you could see a defensive battle possibly beforehand. I just didn't think I would see a Clemson team struggle to score at all. It's not like we saw the kid play last year, Uiagalelei. So do you think defenses are getting any better? Are they catching up to the trends that we're seeing now with the spread game and some of the innovations that we're seeing around college football?
Well, I think the Nick Sabans, the Kirby Smarts, and the Dabo Sweeners are now recruiting a little bit differently. Yes, and that was Saban's problem early on. What he loved just simply didn't work. For the spread, and I think naturally there's an overreaction on Clemson. One thing about Clemson, they lost a coordinator to USF a couple of years ago, and you have to wonder about that. Clemson hardly ever loses a major coach, and has that had an effect? Maybe it has. It also just seems like they don't have the weapons that they had last year. And by the way, why should they? They lost ATN, who was one of the better runners in the country. They lost the best player in college football last year in Trevor Lawrence, and that's just starting. But we get so hung up on hype before the year. And part of it's we love college football. We have really nothing. It's not like we have a draft. It's not like we have a preseason. So we just obsess over these narratives, and a handful of people create the narrative, and we all follow along.
Talking to Paul Feinbaum, brought to you by MTGRT.com, your live and local mortgage expert. You mentioned Georgia and being without some players. I know Kirby did address that, that he called it a major spike that they've had, and a lot of those players are vaccinated too, so who knows who will be available for this weekend's game. I mean, is this a major concern just because of what we talked about last week, because of the rules that are in place about forfeiting games if you can't play?
I think it is a concern at Georgia, and it's a subject that none of us really want to talk about, and that's COVID, because we talked about it for a year, and we're exhausted from it. But it's still a real problem, and I think Georgia, hopefully has contained it. I mean, the good news is they're playing UAB, and I'm not disrespecting UAB. They're a really good program, but Georgia, even shorthanded, should be able to eke out a win against this program. So I hope. I mean, it would just be unconscionable to see this game go by the wayside for Georgia. But that's where we are right now in college football.
Looking at some games for this weekend, and we talked a little bit about Tennessee and Joe Milton's debut, Josh Heupel's debut. I've watched this line move quite a bit. Pittsburgh now a 3.5-point favorite in Knoxville, as they'll honor Johnny Majors, which I think is going to be very cool. But, I mean, what's the concern level of Pittsburgh going into Knoxville and potentially beating Tennessee as Josh Heupel tries to get things on track here?
Well, I think by the end of Saturday afternoon, we're going to know the direction of Tennessee football for this year, and I feel pretty good about it. But I don't think they can have a really good season without this win. This is must, because we know they're going to get trapped in the SEC. We know there's 3 or 4 games that they're just not going to be in. I think this is a winnable game right now. I like their chances. I have no earthly idea what I'm basing that on. But because I didn't I didn't see a lot on Thursday night that really made me feel good, but I also don't think a lot of the Pitt program, and I just think I saw enough from Tennessee that they can score some points. Maybe they can make a couple of stops. It won't be easy, but at the moment, it's Tuesday. I like Tennessee.
Yeah, Paul, I'm going to be honest with you. My reaction after a win Friday morning was, okay, I saw what Joe Milton did. What did the other two do in practice that wasn't good enough? Because, I mean, some of those throws that he didn't make, I was like, oof, try doing that against, a big-time SEC defense.
Yeah, I think the problem is that as much as I love this cliche that we often use. Well, the coach knows more than we do. Not always. I can tell you that I heard some LSU people telling me, they were sorry Miles Brennan got hurt. They really were. I mean, he was a good player. They hated to see T.J. Finley leave, but they felt like they finally got the right quarterback in Max Johnson. Now, I don't know what they saw, but the Max Johnson I saw Saturday night, didn't get the job done. So sometimes you don't know. We've all seen that where the guy who nobody gave a shot gets gets thrown in there. So I think the pressure of the moment was a lot. Now, Thursday night against Bowling Green, don't laugh. But I think now that that's past him, I think it will get easier, even though the competition will be dramatically tougher.
He is Paul Feinbaum of the SEC Network and ESPN. Paul, we appreciate the time as always, and we'll do it again next week.
I just want to thank you for not asking me about Vanderbilt.
Well,
let's bury that for this week.
I mean, we got you.
There's nothing more you could add that we haven't already said.
No, I'm just so relieved because I have great respect for Clark Lee, and I hate that he may be driving through town today listening, and I am so glad I don't have to offer a comment on that. Guys, thank you. I hate to run.
Well, he's coming on at 1, so.
Yeah, we got him at 1 today, so.
Well, please wish him well and tell him not to buy any green bananas.
Thanks, Paul.
See you guys.
Well, we will have Clark Lee at 1 o'clock. Good stuff from Paul Feinbaum. And, honestly, we didn't talk about it at length yesterday because what is there to really say at length? It's one game, and we'll see how they recover. But we will talk about it a little bit later, and we will talk to Vanderbilt head coach Clark Lee at 1 o'clock. We'll come back and wrap up the first hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase next. One thing that stood out to me is what he said about the targeting and the broadcasters railing on the rule. We all know how this works. He knows how it works. You do wonder, is there going to be some meetings behind the scenes of, hey, guys, could we kind of back off bashing, the rule, bashing, making really, really strong comments? You do wonder. I don't, I suspect that, we know that goes on. There's a lot of money at stake. And if somebody is butthurt about it, that has a lot of money into the product and doesn't want to hear that stuff from the broadcasters, certainly there will be meetings about it. But I do wonder if that gets quiet, that narrative kind of quiets down, because to me that would spell that there have been some meetings. But if they continue, because this is not going to stop. I mean, it's going to happen all year. I mean, it's not going to slow down. It is part of the game. I mean, it's just you can't avoid those calls and those hits, and they're 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. I mean, it's hard. So it's going to continue on. And so you do wonder, will that continue? Because I do think if they continue to do it, then it'll kind of force their hand, because they don't want to hear that from the broadcasters, and because that does rile up the fan bases. It does rile up everybody who's watching, and then they're on Twitter, and it becomes, the kind of the hot topic on social media every single weekend. And they don't want that for the game, because here we are on Sports Talk Radio. Sports Talk Radio, this just in's kind of a big deal to start off weeks in every market, because everybody's talking about the weekend that was. And they don't want everybody talking about that instead of the game. And so you do wonder if that does change, because I did agree with him that we all know that happens, but will it happen in this case?
I think it depends on how many times that particular situation comes up in big games where a lot of people are watching. We had a discussion about the number of college football games that have an audience of 4 million or more. I think that's probably a little bit of luck of the draw. Will it come up in games like that, key situations? I do think that in general, and this is something that Paul talked about, there is the word narrative comes in a lot. I think it comes in all sports. We've talked about it in the context of the Vezina Trophy or the Rookie of the Year in the NHL, where you might have, especially last year, where the league didn't see the entire rest of the league. Some of the main people, some of the top guys, like a Kirk Herbstreit or a Joel Klatt or a Gary Danielson, some of the top analysts, if they all sort of have a collective thought that sort of gains momentum, I think that does influence a lot of other media and obviously a lot of other fans. And so it can start to have legs. And then everybody sort of jumps on the bandwagon. The Heisman Trophy is a great example. I think narrative builds for certain guys, and then it can change, but it certainly builds. And once that momentum goes, sometimes it can be hard to stop, especially in college football, where there are so many games every week, and it's so regional. It's impossible to watch every team play every week. So we go with narratives a lot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. I mean, because I think most of the time those narratives, like especially what you're saying with the Heisman, they get it right. Now, I can make the argument in 1997, maybe they didn't, but
that was a big narrative.
That was a huge
narrative. I think Charles Woodson made in the spotlight, a one-handed interception or a big punt return, those had so much flash and narrative to it. It influenced a lot of voters. And I maybe overlooked the fact that when you really look at the stats and what the guy was doing, not that Charles Woodson wasn't a great player or legitimately a candidate, but it just did not outweigh the impact that Peyton Manning had every single week. Now, the problem was Peyton Manning, the narrative was, couldn't beat Florida.
Right.
And, when they played Florida, he didn't really have his greatest games, and I think that was it. That's all the people needed to see. That narrative, very simply in a box, I'm voting for Woodson.
And it was that one, and it was also, I think part of it was the narrative of, when he went into that season, people were ready to just hand him the trophy of like, well, he's going to win it. And so I think sometimes you you run into a group of people that go, well, you're telling me that it's already predetermined, and so I'm going to go against you just because I'm going to go against you. I think
there's some of that too. But and then those people, when he had the bad game against Florida, was like, oh, see, he's not the best. And then I'm looking, now look at what Woodson's doing, and they were an undefeated team, and so it got legs.
Narratives can be good, narratives can be bad.
Yeah,
I mean that's what this is. Now, what is it going to do for these rules that need to change? I think this is if you get everybody on board saying every week on national broadcast that targeting is.
But that's how rules end up getting changed anyway. Yeah. Like the Saints Rams interference thing. Yeah. That alone, that one play changed.
But then
they
went back on it.
Then they went back on it because maybe it wasn't a great idea.
I'd like to see them revisit that because maybe there's a better way to do it. Like I still think. Looking at things isn't a bad thing, but it's like with targeting. How can you expedite the review process, but how can you also focus more on the intent in the play to try and get the rule right and try and get the rule in right? And going back to what we were saying earlier, do you have a warning system where you're not thrown out right away if it was a mistake, but you're given a warning of if you do it again, you're out? That,
and it takes a while. I think of goaltender interference is another one where it went.
Do
they
still have that right?
It went through an evolution, but it's better than it was a few years ago. But it may never be perfect. Yeah. I think the targeting would be the same way. There's always going to be a little bit of subjectivity, but if you just keep working at it, you can come up with a better system than it is right now.
Yeah.
He also perked up when I brought up Nick Saban in Alabama. It is pretty amazing, right, in this landscape of college football. And he doesn't get to keep these kids for, a decade or more. And he does have to switch out his roster a lot. And he switches out his coaching staff a lot. And yet he just keeps plugging away. I don't think anybody's going to argue Nick Saban is going to go down as the greatest college football coach ever. I would find it hard-pressed. I know all the greats, all the great names that people are going to throw out from the past. But in fairness, the way he's done with 130 Division I schools, it's harder now. You play more games, way more games. And so depending on which coach we're talking about in what decade, way more games, competing against way more schools for recruiting. I don't think anybody's going to argue Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach ever. The question is, how does he do it? How does he keep Alabama at this level where we always say that there's bound to always be a dip, or even the greats have an off season. How does he never have – like an off season for them is not winning the national championship. Like that's an off season. Like, they lost in the national championship game. Or, isn't that an off season? I guess 1 year they lost the SEC championship game. 1 year. Still made it into the playoffs. Went on to win the national championship game. I mean, how do you keep it at this level this long where it really looks like you have no competition?
Yeah, real quick to your point about greatest of all time, we didn't really get to spend a lot of time on this, but ESPN did a 101 greatest college football coaches. I think it was in the last 50 years, 75 years, somewhere in there. And they had Saban number 1 over Bear. It was Saban, Bear Bryant. So they did put Saban number 1. So I mean, that right there shows you that I think people are already leaning that way, that he's the greatest of all time.
No disrespect, and I'm just telling you, I get it. He played with the cards that he was dealt, and there weren't very. How many Division I schools were they back then? How many were there? I don't know.
I don't know.
Half
probably.
Right? I mean, I don't know what the exact number is. And back then, kids would just come to a big school just to say they were playing there, even if they never saw the field. They didn't care. Like today's mentality is, if I'm not starting, I don't care who you are. I'm going somewhere else. That's a lot of kids' mentality. Not back then. Like I said, not his fault, not, marking it against him. I'm just saying it was a lot different, and he had a lot of advantages that, quite frankly, coaches today don't have. And I don't want to take anything away from his resume. I get it. He should clearly be number 2 in Bear Bryant. I just think clearly Nick Saban is the greatest. But how does he can't even get competition. Like, these games are a joke. It's rare to get forget a loss. It's hard to get an Alabama close game. Like, that to me is mind-blowing. At this, how long he's been able to do it, where it is hard to even get a game. How did we get to this point?
I think if we truly knew the answer to that, then you would have other teams that are close to him. I mean, clearly he has the juju, however you want to put it.
Paul made a good point. He said he can select. He's got first dibs. Mm-hmm. You could argue Vanderbilt's in this area for baseball now. Nationwide, they can go and they can almost pick and choose among the best players. Which ones are the right ones for us? Which type of guys do we want among the elite? And they're making the right choices, Alabama is, to sustain. It's so impressive that they lose all these guys to the draft, and then they come back with a lot of new faces, but they're still just as good. They don't drop off. So the development of those guys that they're selecting, they have a great formula of being able to sustain like that. It is really remarkable, especially in a league like the SEC where the arms race is always so much the commitment by so many of the programs to chase them. They can't catch them. And
here's the other part of this, guys. Not only does he have players for 3 or 4 years and rotate them in and out, it's coaches too. I mean, he goes through his entire coaching staff because they move on, they get jobs because of all the winning that they do, and they still don't miss a beat. I mean, we've been sitting here, part of the narrative with the Titans all summer is got a new offensive coordinator. What's the offense going to look like? How much is it going to change? Is it going to affect Ryan Tannehill?
Which are normal questions to ask.
Whereas if you're Nick Saban, it doesn't matter if it's Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, or Bill O'Brien. It just whatever. They don't miss a beat. Now, obviously, he probably tells them.
He's learned how to adapt. He's learned how to tackle that. And he did a long time ago. Sometimes it's when, bringing the guys into the stable of, whatever the cubicle room that he keeps these guys in, this bullpen of ex-coaches.
You think they have cubicles?
I think they have cubicles in the basement somewhere. They don't have the really super nice office.
I think Bill O'Brien has an office.
You think so?
I think he has an office.
But what's his title?
Offensive coordinator.
Well, obviously he has an office now, but I'm talking about the Butch Davis, and he's had some of these guys in the bullpen.
The ones that are in the program.
He elevates them. Like
that's true.
He takes them out of exile.
Butch probably
puts them in the basement with the red stapler and the cubicle, and then he's got them developed. It's like he's developing his farm system. Sometimes it's a coach that failed somewhere or had like Sarkisian had off-field issues, but he says, okay, he's got a good mind, he's got value. Yeah. Let's just bring him in, teach him what our program's about, and then I elevate him when the spot opens up.
When he graduates out of the program, the Nick Saban coaching rehabilitation program.
Right. Now, if he fixes Butch Davis, then we've really got something. Or Butch Jones, I mean.
Well, Butch Jones, he did. Butch Jones got a job. He graduated.
Let's see what he does.
They don't all go on to be successful.
No.
But when he elevates them,
are not capable of getting a job on their own because of their image at that point, and then he's able to kind of fix that image, or at least it just goes away with time, and then they get an opportunity. That's what it really does.
But does it? Whether they go on, like I don't know what Lane Kiffin will end up doing at Ole Miss, but Lane Kiffin when he went to Alabama. I was like, I'm not a believer in him, but
and you had every right to feel that way at that time.
And he did a great job for Alabama.
Because
he did a great job for Alabama.
Sarkisian
did a great job for Alabama. And now we don't know what is going to happen at Texas, but he did a great job for Alabama.
Look where his star was. Look where his name was before he got to Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't know where else he was going to get a job.
Well, I mean, like McElwain was not successful.
But he was at Alabama.
He was at Alabama,
and that's all that matters to Nick Saban, ultimately.
Right.
What you do on your own. I guess he cares. He'd like to see them do well.
Well, McElwain was successful. when he left, when he went to where'd he go? Colorado State. He was successful.
He was,
he absolutely was successful because it landed him the Florida job.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Kirby Smart?
That's what I was going to say. Kirby, in my mind, is probably the most successful assistant after post-Alabama. Agreed?
I mean, we know nobody's beaten him, so they haven't had great success because not one of them has been able to even beat him. Forget, elevate
Kirby
the program past him.
That's perfect for Nick Saban. They go on, they do well, but they can't beat him.
They can't beat him.
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable. It really is. And by the way, he's showing no signs. And I get it. He's elite. I mean, if there's anybody that should get it from all the conversations I've brought up on the show, why is he being able to do it at this age? Because he's elite. He's different than he's not just everybody else. Everybody else starts winding down, but he's elite. Nick Saban is just different than everybody else, and I don't know when he's going to stop. I mean, is he? What? I don't even know his age. What is? He's got to be
70.
Almost 70, right? Is he? He's 70.
Yeah, I think we talked about this the other day. Halloween, he turned 70.
I mean, what? 5 years? 10 years? I don't know what the number is.
I mean, realistically, I don't see him coaching to 80, but I mean, he's done things that are unrealistic. So, who knows? It's up to him. I mean, there's only one person on Miss Terry may have something to say about it, but there's really only two people on the face of this earth that can make that decision, and their last name is Saban.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure he's got pretty comfortable saying he's got a good 5 years left in him for sure.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, even if they win one game, like if he won one game this year, you think anybody at Alabama is going to say, Nick, time to hang it up? No, they're not.
No, he has earned the right to end it whenever he wants to end it. No matter
I'll
what
tell
it looks
you
like
when
at
I'm
the
done.
end. Yeah, no matter what it looks like when he's done, right? It doesn't matter. And I don't think there'll ever be a dip in him. Does anybody think there's going to be a Tom Brady dip? I don't think so. I just think the minute the dip even creeps into the equation, I think he'll retire. So we'll never see the dip.
Yeah, and I think that has a better chance of happening than Saban.
And Saban too. I just think the minute he feels like he's losing it, which I don't even know how he could have that feeling because there's no proof of it at all. None. So, I mean, he's got the winning formula. He has the winning playbook. It's like Back to the Future, right? He's got the book that's telling you who's going to win down the road. Like, he's got the winning playbook. So, how is it going to change just because he's 75 years old? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it ever changes. I just think one day he wakes up and says, maybe it's time just to wind down. And
10 natties, I'm done.
Yeah, right. I got more rings than I've got fingers, so I think I'm going to call it a career. I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to see a dip. I don't know if we ever see a dip in Brady. I don't know if we ever see a dip in Saban. I think the minute either one of them feel like that's coming or it's happening, they just walk away. And so we don't even see it from them, which is why they'll go away the greatest of all time. And I don't think there's an argument with Tom Brady either. He's going to go down as the greatest of all time, and the only knock he's going to have is the people that hate the Patriots, and they're going to bring up cheating. And I get it. He's never going to get away from that. It's just going to be attached to his resume. It doesn't change the fact that he's going to still go away as the greatest quarterback of all time, maybe the greatest player of all time in the National Football League. All right, we'll come back. Start hour number 2 with Joe Rexroad from Robbie and Rexroad. We do that next. Hour number 2, Darren, Daunic, and Chase, presented by Rashawn CBD. Rashawn CBD products curated for life. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic, Chase McCabe with you. We were just having the discussion about Alabama and Nick Saban. Pair of tickets to see Santana at First Bank Amphitheater. I want to get to this place. It looks really cool. That show is on September 29th. You must pick up the phone and tell Elijah how many national championships Nick Saban has won as a head coach. Do that, and you're going to this show. A pair of tickets to see Santana at First Bank Amphitheater on September 29th. That number, 615-737-1025. That's our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. How many national championships has Nick Saban won as a head coach? Tell Elijah that, and you'll be going to that show. Good luck. All right, let's bring in Joe Rexroad from The Athletic and Robbie and Rexroad. Weekdays 6A to 10A leading up to our show. He now joins us. So, Joe, I'm going to hit you with some of the topics we've been talking about on the show today and yesterday. Let's start with Nick Saban. The question for the listeners. Do you think we will ever see a dip in Nick Saban ever as a head coach, or do you think the minute the dip creeps into the equation, he goes away? He retires. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because someone pointed out to me yesterday, like this headline, like is this the end for? Is this the beginning of the end for Clemson? You know, the loss to Georgia. It reminds me of some stuff that was written a few years ago when Hugh Freeze, beat Saban, and it was pretty laughable then, and it's almost impossible now to imagine like the dip, the way Alabama has things rolling, and the NIL thing, just you come right in. Hey, you haven't done anything in the field. How about $1 million in NIL? Like it's all, you want to win championships. You want to go to the NFL. You want to maximize your earning power as a college athlete. I mean, here you go. Best coach in college football history. So how does that take a dip? But things do, right? I mean, we've seen plenty of great coaches and programs and franchises, although I shouldn't say franchises because the pro sport's totally different. We've seen them fall off. Sometimes it's not until the coach leaves. I just can't imagine this would happen. And Darren, I will, to your second part of that question, that's exactly what I think would happen. If it starts, Nick gets out quickly. The amazing thing to me is that he's been able to do this with so much staff turnover. I mean, it's like a new reclamation project at OC every couple of years, who then goes on and gets a great head coaching job. And just so many people want anybody affiliated with that staff to be on their staff. And he just keeps reloading coaches. And, maybe that's a little bit of a comment on like Jimmy and Joe's versus X's and O's.
By the way, he doesn't just lose coordinators. I mean, I remember when Tennessee hired Sal Sunseri. Oh, he's been coach at Alabama, and that was a disaster. I mean, he loses coaches. Period. Like his staff, with all their success, goes away. They get better opportunities. Maybe they're stuck or they're pigeonholed on his staff, but they get a better opportunity somewhere else and they leave. It is amazing. I mean, he's going to be 70 during the course of this season, and I just don't know with everything you just said. Like now you throw NIL in there already. He's the greatest recruiter. He's the greatest coach. He puts you at the next level, where they all want to be. And now you throw in NIL. I mean, he's going to be 70 this season. I mean, he's elite. He's different than everybody else. If there's anybody that ever could do this till they're 80, it's Nick Saban. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all.
No, I wouldn't either. And he's. I think a lot of coaching lifers who are successful. I mean, you probably can't even consider the prospect of not doing this. So the possibility that he might go that long, I think, is very real. And you obviously think of like Joe Paterno, and how and of course by the time late in his, apart from the scandal and everything, but even before that, the last few years of his coaching tenure. It was almost like a figurehead situation a little bit.
Yep.
I don't know if Saban would want that, because, of course, Paterno had all kinds of ups and downs in his later years on the field.
Yep.
But, yeah, Saban right now, I mean, I covered Nick Saban at Michigan State when he was in his 40s, and he looked older than he does now. So I don't know, man. The guy might be a vampire, too.
It's a good point. You're right. He certainly doesn't look like a guy who's about to turn 70. You go back and look at old pictures, I don't think anything looks different. It's amazing. We also have talked about the targeting rule. And speaking of, we were all together doing a fantasy draft on Saturday watching the Penn State-Wisconsin game. And there was certainly some controversy there and some key players that had to exit the game because of that. We saw it again last night. We're going to keep seeing it every weekend in college football. The broadcasters have been pretty vocal. Joel Klatt was very vocal during the Penn State-Wisconsin game about it, and it wasn't in favor of the rule. He said college football has to change this. Kirk Herbstreit massaged it a little bit better last night than Joel Klatt. Where do you think ultimately this is going, or is it going anywhere? How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I heard you guys earlier, and I think I agree with Willie that there's such an outcry now that and it has been changed anyway, right? It's not like it's been the exact same from day one till now, but I suspect there's going to be a real emphasis on an effort in getting this to be a little bit more common sense. And to me, first of all, in general, I think it's been a very good rule in terms of increasing the safety of the sport, making the sport safer, and you have to be punitive to me for that to be the case. So when I see someone use their helmet as a weapon and lead with that, and try to land a blow with the helmet, which we used to see a lot in football, that I'm all for targeting, ejection, perfect. Make it punitive. And I think that we've seen it work. I think that the sport has gotten safer. I really do, in terms of the way people approach it, and even just beyond targeting, it's the crackback blocks and some of these things that can really hurt someone are out of the game, and I still love it as much as I ever did. So I think overall the safety movement is good. But, yeah, when you have some of these calls recently, both games you mentioned, Darren, just some bad ones. That should be maybe a 15, and I just think we just have to do a better job of defining things, maybe more tiers to the rule or something, just a more common sense approach where if it's, yes, you want people to get their head out. Some people would argue on the other side, listen, I understand that it's not launching in like classic targeting, but you're still, if you put your head down, that's where you or the opponent can get hurt, and we have to stop that from happening. But as anybody, should know, when you're playing at that speed sometimes, it's just incidental, It's just sometimes you can't avoid it. So I just think it needs to be enforced better and maybe altered in some way. But, again, easier said than done.
Yeah. Joe, I heard you and Robbie reeling off. I forget forgive me, I forget the site where they were making Titans predictions or saying, what if this happens? I don't know. It was pretty outlandish and pretty over the top, and if they do that, I agree with what they were saying. They will win the Super Bowl because I think we all can come together and say all those things are not happening, and probably more. I would lean toward none of them will happen than I would all of them happening. But with that being said, we did have some fun on the show yesterday when Chase, was like, pump the brakes after week one no matter what happens, and I kind of called him. I was like, we don't need coach speak and, pump the brakes like this team. So we had some fun at that. The hype is there. This is the most hyped Titans team in almost 2 decades in this market. And I know because we've been here through it all. And so ultimately, how do you think all this is going to play out? Because it feels good. The anticipation is there. I think the fans are going to be there. They're all in. But there still are a lot of question marks that we haven't seen play out yet. How do you ultimately see this playing out? How do you see Sunday playing out? I think it's a really intriguing matchup to start off your season.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I think that Titans are going to be good. I think there's a level of certainty with the offense, and even there are questions. If I'm an opponent, I'm attacking whoever's at right tackle, for sure. But other than that, if I'm an opponent, I don't like what I'm looking at on film. Of course, there's no film to watch, but I don't like what I'm looking at on film of the various individuals who are going to be together on that offense Sunday and beyond. But I mean, I don't know with this defense, and if it doesn't work out, if Bud Dupree doesn't come in and make a huge impact, if this collective improvement that we think we saw in practice and then in preseason games, which were largely played by backups after some good early series, if that all doesn't pan out, which is very possible, then I still think you're talking about a good team. I mean, like last year, they had an absolutely awful defense, and they won the division. But I don't think it'll be able to match the hype. And I could see the other side of this. I mean, I could see Dupree coming in and making a difference for Landry, and Autry coming in and making a difference for Simmons. And all of a sudden, you have guys who can run and play in the secondary. Hooker comes right in and is ready. Jenkins, Fulton is good in the second year. I do like Molden, maybe Farley. So, I mean, you could go down the list and say, wow, they could be quite a bit better on defense. And if they are, well, then I think this is an AFC contender. I think if they're average or above on defense, I think it's an AFC contender. But, I mean, Sunday, good or bad, there's going to be things we see that we didn't anticipate, right? And then we're going to probably, overreact to them Monday.
Yep.
and then whatever we think is going to happen in Seattle based on the team's first two games, the first game for the Titans, the first game for the Seahawks will probably be totally different. I mean, keeping an open mind. But I agree with you, on the fans, I feel like the anticipation, again, I mean, I've only been here since 2016, but it's nothing, it's not close to what I've seen before. And it seems like it's been a long, long time. And I'm really interested to see, what that stadium looks like Sunday afternoon.
Joe Rexrode is with us, one half of Robbie and Rexrode mornings at 6 here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, also writes for The Athletic. And I was reading the article that you were a part of predicting the AFC South, or talking about things in the AFC South. And when you did your record predictions, I wasn't surprised that all four of you picked the Titans to win the division, because it feels like a safe bet just with the other storylines with the other teams. I think what stood out to me was the records, though. You have them at 12-5. Staples went 11-6. Reese went 10-7. Kiefer went 11-6. I mean, once again, double-digit wins, which needs to be the goal for this team. But were you surprised that your colleagues went that way too?
No, not too much. I think everyone has to look at this division right now and just have real questions about the Colts and how everything's going to play out for them. Even if, Wentz is available all the time, that was already a big question, and then you have other injuries and you have the vaccination rate and all these things. So, to me, and that could make, there's maybe, 2 wins for the Titans potentially in your mind where you might have only given them one or none before. I feel like the Titans are the safest bet, because the offense shouldn't take a big step back. Now, of course, Todd Downing is the new OC, and so there's a lot of pressure on him to maintain things. But I think that's about where I expected. I'm going to be really interested, and I assume that comes out this week, our staff-wide NFL picks, because I still, in the back of my mind, have this idea that maybe people who aren't around here or even cover the AFC South might still just go default Colts. We'll see. That seems to be very popular.
One thing that you mentioned in one of the blurbs, talking about the biggest question going in, you bring up the pass rush. And you referenced the over $22 million that was spent last year on Clowney and Beasley. Now, I'm a firm believer that if, as a GM or a coach, if you win a Super Bowl, it pretty much washes away your mistakes. But how much do you think John Robinson is going to have to feel this? Because you add Bud Dupree to the mix. They just restructured Julio's contract, the contract for Henry, everything that he's handed out. I mean, how much do you think this is going to stick with him if they are a legit contender, maybe even get to the Super Bowl, but they don't win it?
Well, it'll certainly be discussed a lot, and that's totally fair. And also you look at, this draft class, very early, but you're not getting much out of your second-round pick at this point. And, the first-round pick, I think everybody knew that might take a little bit more time. But last year's draft class, obviously, a huge drop-off from the year before. So, yeah, these things are going to be discussed a lot. So I think John Robinson, if like Bud Dupree is a flop, certainly it's like, or Julio Jones for that matter, it gets a lot of discussion. But, your job as a GM is to put out a good team and to build a team. And so, like, if you were advocating for John Robinson, that argument, say, well, let's not forget that fourth-round pick Amani Hooker right now is a good starting safety. And fifth-round pick Jayon Brown is a good middle linebacker. And, Jeffrey Simmons was a pick that worked out. There's plenty of count. There's way more good moves than bad moves. But when you're this close, and you're kind of shifting into the go for it mode, which I think is obvious with John Robinson. I think he's done some things. Julio tops the list that you only do if you feel like you are ready to really make a run. Well, if those things don't pan out, then that's ultimately what you're trying to do is win a Super Bowl. I said this last year. I know Jared and I have argued about this, but I still like going for Clowney. I don't like Beasley because there were red flags galore, but I still like going for Clowney. It didn't work out, and we'll see with him in Cleveland. And I will continue to like going after Julio Jones because I think that's where this team is. Like, get a elite talent, hope there's still gas in the tank. You got to make things work. But, man, not only are you potentially creating just an unbelievable offense, this is a business. And, to Darren's point earlier, I think that is a huge part of why people are so excited in this town.
Talking to Joe Rexrode. And, Joe, as we've just sort of laid out, everybody's got the big questions. Even the really, really good teams, even the Chiefs, they've got some questions. And so that's part of it. I try to put it into context. But one of the things I think we're all counting on as we try to assess the Titans is that they're going to be able to run the ball and run it well with Derrick Henry. But I am a little bit worried about the offensive line with this factor. You've got Taylor Lewan coming back from the injury. You've got, in the short term, Ben Jones and Nate Davis, who had the COVID issues, and you got a brand-new right tackle, which we're still not 100% sure how that's going to go at all. That's a huge X factor. Do you think they'll be settled on the offensive line come Sunday? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, no, well, that's a great question and great point, Willie, because, even last year, I felt like in the Denver game in particular, it wasn't all in sync. The whole offense, but I think up front they weren't all in sync. Year before that's a little different because Lewan was suspended. But you struggled a lot at right guard, and Saffold was struggling. I do feel like just Lewan, the fact that he played the preseason game and watched him in practice, I think he's ready to rock. I think Lewan and Saffold have a great chemistry. But like to your point, in the very short term here, Ben Jones, Nate Davis coming off the COVID list. I think one of them should be today, I believe. So you're talking about, a practice or two and get out there and play. And they've both been hurt, too. So it's not like this is just the time they've missed being on the reserve COVID list. Like, they missed a bunch of time before that with various injuries. So I think it is a lot. Those four have been together, so you feel like mentally and timing, communication, things like that, like they should be in pretty good shape. But physically, I could see someone like Nate Davis or Ben Jones needing some work to get up to game shape. So you have that, and then like you said, Willie, right tackle, who's it going to be? I'm guessing David Quessenberry. It's three guys that, all have played some good football in this league. If I'm the Cardinals, first of all, I'm looking at that right tackle at the highest level right away.
Before we let you go, Joe, I do want to ask you one about Vanderbilt. I know you wrote an article about it. I watched the game start to finish. I feel like there's a lot of people that have piled on, just looked at the final score, which I get, or just watch the highlights. But to me, almost like when you watch the whole game, it was even more disturbing because of how it unfolded. Like I just was looking for some positive And I didn't really see in any facet where they looked like they were making progress. And I'm a big believer in what Clark Lee is building. It's so early. It's not at all time to write him off. But I just think he had to be shocked about how little they got done there from a scheme standpoint, I think you knew the personnel was going to be limited, but how it matched up against East Tennessee State, the mistakes that they made, it was just there were no check marks of any boxes.
Oh, I agree. And, I think the offensive plan and everything about that side of the ball was a really bad performance. Look, maybe if that Mike Wright drive where he gets a touchdown past Chris Pierce, if that doesn't get called back for ineligible, maybe that gives them some momentum and they build on that. But like you said, I think of that drive and maybe a smattering of other plays in the game, that were positive. But I think the more sobering thing, Willie, was just the fact that the defense, which, having watched practice a few times in camp, I just really liked the change there and how they battle with the offense and some of the vocal leaders. The fact that ETSU could just come out and just run at them, boy, that just doesn't bode well. It really doesn't. So I don't know if, the answers are there. I do think that, the coaches have got to do a much better job with two good quarterbacks, very different quarterbacks, a good set of receivers who have made plays.
That was the thing to me, Joe, is that those same guys did pitch and catch and score some points, move the ball some last year, and it just didn't happen at all. They weren't open. The schemes didn't seem there. Certainly the pass protection was brutal. So whatever they're trying to do there has got to get better. But there was a regression from I thought that they would somewhere along the line, have a nice drive or two or hit a big play to overcome some of the other stuff, but it just didn't happen with some of the same guys that we've seen produce before.
Exactly. So that to me is okay, coaches, you're supposed to be putting people in position to be successful. You're supposed to be, obviously scheming against the opponent and then adjusting. And I think it was F's all around in this one. But that's where if they're going to have any success this year, that's where it has to be. You've got to figure out a way to let your passers and pass catchers operate, and I think they could actually do some good things. But that might just be the reality of the defense, which doesn't bode well for the rest of the year.
We'll see what week 2 looks like, and we're going to be talking to Clark Lee at 1:00. Joe, thanks for the time. We will talk to you again here soon. We'll be listening tomorrow.
All right, guys.
All right,
Thanks,
Joe Rexrode from The Athletic, and of course, Robbie and Rexrode in the morning is a must-listen. Fantastic show. Outstanding stuff. Let's turn it over to Chase.
Let's do it. It's time to talk about my favorite, BetMGM. As summer heats up, so does the sports betting action at BetMGM. Sign up now using the code 1025GAME, and your first wager is totally risk-free, up to $1,000. Place your bets on all the exciting showdowns in MLB, MLS, and more sports from around the globe. When you register with BetMGM, you'll also get instant access to a variety of parlay selection features like live betting options, player props, and daily boosted odds specials on all the big games. From breathtaking goals to colossal home runs, the king of sportsbooks takes every play to a whole new level of excitement. Simply download the BetMGM app today or go to BetMGM.com. Use that code 1025GAME to get back up to $1,000 on your very first wager. It's a new customer offer, paid in free bets. You must be 21 years or older, must be in Tennessee. Visit BetMGM.com for a full list of terms and conditions. For problem gambling support, call the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789.
Special thanks to Joe Rexroad for joining us. Good stuff from him. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, presented by Rashawn CBD. Rashawn CBD products curated for life. It is going to be a much anticipated season for the Tennessee Titans as they open up their year at home at Nissan Stadium against the Arizona Cardinals, which I think is a really, really intriguing matchup. But with that being said, there is going to be a lot of hype around this team. And we can say pump the brakes. We can say it's only one game. It's going to be hard for a while to keep everybody corralled because everybody is going to judge everything because they're going to be so hyped of if they win convincingly, the hype train is going to be rolling down the tracks. And, yes, it's just going to be after one game. If they don't look so great, people are going to be freaking out. They're going to be running for probably the upper deck of the Titanic looking for that raft because they're going to be jumping ship. That's just how it works with fans, right? We know that's part of fandom. That's how they're crazed, right? And so I do think people will freak out if they lose, especially if they don't look good. But I think that also comes with a much-anticipated season, and that's what they've got on their hands. And ultimately, isn't that what you want?
Sure.
That's what you want. If you run a ticket office, if you're the owner of the franchise, if you're the GM of the franchise, if you're the coaches and the players, don't you want a season where people are anticipating success? I would hope so.
Yeah, but what if they look good and it's a shootout and they lose in overtime? You know, I mean, you're still going to have people freaking out, too, of like, oh, they lost the game. I mean, I think it's all about just looking at the play on the field. Yes, the goal is to win the game. You want to win the game. But if they come out and they look good on offense, you know, they're scoring points, they're not settling for field goals, they're making stops on defense, you know, they're getting to a very difficult quarterback to get to in Kyler Murray, a young secondary is making some plays, then, you know, you walk away from that game going, all right, I'm seeing good things. Now you got to put it together and actually win the game. Whereas if they get blown out and they're not competitive and they're turning the ball over and they're making mistakes, then that's where all the, you know, oh no, the sky is falling comes in.
I think by definition, the first week is always a freak out one way or the other. There's extremes. Even if they win 35-7, there's going to be a dive in, and the expectations will even go another step. I just try to keep in mind that there's a list of players right now: Caleb Farley, Bud Dupree, whoever ends up being the right tackle, Taylor Lewan, Julio Jones,
Darrington Evans.
A lot of just guys that haven't played much in the entire preseason or had big issues from last year, injuries, etc. And so it's just really hard to expect that everything's going to look the way it's going to look in December in week one. I think it is especially now with the 17th week. The season is a little bit longer. As a coach, maybe you can say, I can be a little bit more patient if I get off to a bad start. The problem is that I think my biggest concern with the expectations is that the schedule is legit tough. Like I was looking at some of the
it's a first place schedule.
Some of the rankings post preseason, you know, from some of the experts, and you know, if you look at how they rank the NFC, the Titans play like 4 of the top 5 teams in the NFC, which is a pretty shallow conference. Like the NFC is not that deep, but the Titans get the best of the NFC during the season, and we know they play a first place schedule, so they play a lot of the top teams in the AFC too, which is a very deep conference. So I think there's going to be some ebb and flow.
Sure.
For sure. But that's why this first game is interesting, because if you were playing the Chiefs, it'd almost be like, well, if you lose the Chiefs, you know, we're looking long-term here. But this is when you really feel like you need to win.
Yeah, but there's no doubt, Darren, to your point about the hype that is with this team. I mean, I drive all over town and I've seen like 6 billboards with all the players on them. I mean, they're you know, they're hyped as a team, putting those up. I'm seeing more Titans gear than I've ever seen. People walking around. I mean, it feels like 20 years ago. You know, I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like that this team, you know, has that following again, and it goes back to the conversation we had yesterday of what's the stadium going to look like. I expressed my concerns about getting into the building. Like, let's make that easier. But I think people are going to be all about it, and they are all about it. So with that, you got to put up the results. But like I said, I mean, I'm going to be watching the play. I want them to win the game. They need to win the game. That's how you set the tone. You're at home. But if you're showing me that all these things that have been concerned that aren't necessarily fixed in week one, but you're showing great signs of improvement, because one thing Joe referenced when he was on with us and also in his article on The Athletic of, the defense does look different. What we've seen in
very
camp,
different.
What we've seen in preseason, the defense does look different. So,
but how much better is still a very
how much
open,
better is it?
Very open question.
Yep.
And I don't know if we're going to find out in week one for sure. It's 1 week. I think, do people understand, with the expectations being Super Bowl, that you could be better than you were last year, which I think they will be, but it may not reflect in a great record because the schedule is tougher. I think that's very possible, that you could end up being a better
tougher
team
today on paper. Remember that. Let's keep that in mind, because things can happen through the course of the season, right? We get caught up in that a lot over the years, and we learn that, Russell Wilson could be hurt and out for week 2, or down the road, another big-time tilt. Some key guy is out, or COVID, whatever. So you never know how the course of a season is going to play out, right, with the opponents. On paper, yes, it looks like an extremely difficult schedule, but we've tried to analyze. Right, it could change, and it could work in their favor. It could also not work in their favor, but it could.
Well,
could work in their favor.
To that end, as you look at this schedule, the teams that you think right now, they are at the top. That's going to be a tough one. Not saying it's an automatic loss, but it's just that it's going to be a tough game, but then has the best chance of, by the time you get to that game, going the other way. Like they could have, and here's what I mean by that. When I look at the LA Rams, there's a ton of hype with the LA Rams because of Matthew Stafford, because that's the missing piece.
And they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they were pretty good last year, were it not for some shaky quarterback play.
Right. And so that has, like I said, that's been the missing piece.
Pretty good.
Everybody, including myself, is like, yeah, you know what? I'm a believer. I'm on the Rams bandwagon. I think they're going to be pretty good. But that also, by the time you get to week 9, is the one
Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald could be out.
Well, not even that. It could be that the question that has been a question for 10 years could be answered, and the answer could be Matthew Stafford's just not that good.
Could be.
I mean, that's why I put that in that category. I mean, the Bills could be another one, that it was a 1-year thing, and it was a fluke, and the league figures out Josh Allen, and he falls off. Now, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. Every year, but some of these things, there will be surprises.
Right,
some obvious things.
But you know what I mean.
Well, how could this team not be good?
Sure.
Something is going to go wrong for some of these, and it could be the Titans. Maybe Julio Jones gets hurt in the first week. There's a lot of things that could send
check out of a play.
There's a lot of things that could send a team's season off the rails.
Right.
And that will happen to a few teams.
And that's what I love.
And there'll be some surprises. There'll be some teams that don't look like they're supposed to be really good right now that light it up.
The Jets could – I can't even finish that sentence. I'm just kidding.
I don't know about that one.
But,
that'd be good for our fantasy league. We have way too many Jets on our team.
We do. We have a lot of Jets.
That's problematic.
It is. New England could end up being
now. New England is one that we are getting
a
lot of. There's a lot of people that are predicting them
really
to be good.
That's what I mean. They could end up being the surprise. Mac Jones could be, the second coming of Brady, and Belichick once again looks like a genius.
I'm not even sure that it would be a shock at this point. I see a lot of people predicting that the Patriots will contend with the Bills for that division.
I just saw it this morning on First Take.
Oh yeah. It's kind of a trendy. Well, not just a playoff team, but a division winner, better than the Bills.
Well, and here's the thing: that division could swing either way. If Buffalo, in New England, and Miami, you believe all the hype that people have with those teams, that's going to be a damn good division. Mm-hmm. The Jets would be the weak link,
and the Jets can't be worse if they're any better at all with a new look and all these new players.
I think they made a really good coaching hire. Now it's can he get everybody to buy in, and can he get the front office to leave him alone?
Well, also think about the quarterbacks in that division.
Or the owner, I should say.
Josh Allen, who has had one huge year, so he's sort of the exception. And then Tua, unproven, and then you have 2 rookies, 2 first-round picks. So that is an X factor in that division.
Is.
So there's so many things. That's what makes this league fun, is there's always surprises. But that goes back to our original. The expectation level is so high. I'll give you an example from the past. 2009, when the Titans had come off a great year, the number 1 seed, they lost the playoff game, but you're still thinking, hey, you got Chris Johnson on the rise. You got a great defense. All of this, and they went 0-6.
Yep.
Like it's one thing to
was on the rise. He had a 2,000-yard season.
He ran for 2,000 yards, but they went 0-6.
Well, but they lost Hainsworth.
That was the big
Jim
question.
Schwartz.
But there were question marks.
Yep.
But for them, you never could have envisioned 0-6.
Right? That was Schwartz's first year with the Lions, right? 09?
An 09?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
right.
so.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so, I mean.
But
didn't the 08 team, let's see, wasn't that, let me look.
That was the Hainsworth peak.
Yeah, it was. It's right, because that was
Hainsworth got paid.
They went to Detroit on Thanksgiving and beat the tar out of the Lions.
Yeah, they went 10-0, and they beat the Steelers to get the 1 seed.
Because that team went 0-16, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you remember who broke
0-16
the undefeated streak? It was here.
Who broke the undefeated streak?
When they were 10-0?
Yeah, when the Titans were 10-0.
Oh,
who beat them?
Yeah. The 08 season?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Jets.
Yep. Quarterbacked by Brett Favre.
Well, he had been texting the night before, and
Yes.
he was inspired.
Yes, you had to go there.
What?
It's not too soon. No, it's not too soon.
Excuse me?
It's not too soon. But I have had more people tell me, this is why I know it's anticipated, because there has been a pretty good chunk of a window where nobody asked for tickets, nobody cared about it. You couldn't give away tickets. I've had more people tell me about their ticket situation this year than I've heard from Titans fans in a long, long time. There used to be a time when it was incredibly difficult to get a ticket, and people were always on the prowl, on the hunt for tickets. And then that went away, and it's been a long time since it's been back. But I've had more people tell me they're coming in from out of town for this game. Or, hey, do you know if there's any tickets for this? Hey, I just had this one the other day. Hey, I'm looking for 10 tickets to the Dolphins game. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, pull up the couch cushions? Well, 10 tickets. What? So, I'm getting a lot of that. And so that tells me that people they're way on board with this team, because it's been a while since I've had that many people this offseason tell me what games they're going to, what games they're looking for tickets, what games they have tickets for. And it's been a while since we've had that type of chatter in this market about a Titans game. And look, if they come out of the gate swinging and they have some success, it'll only get better. We'll be talking about games that are sellouts. That will happen in this market. Congratulations to Micah Phillips. Micah Phillips was the one who called in and told Elijah Campbell that Nick Saban has won 7 national championships as a head coach. So go enjoy that Santana show at the end of this month. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 2 next. Don't miss the 2021 Middle Tennessee Highland Games and Celtic Festival. That'll be this Saturday, September 11th, at Percy Warner Park. A fun-filled day full of Celtic games, children's activities, Celtic music, food, Scottish and Irish dancers. I will not be a part of that. Local and regional vendors, neither will Chase. And much, much more. Tickets are on sale right now.
That's a great visual.
It is. You can't see us doing that? No? Doing a little...
The Irish jig?
Yeah. No?
No, I can see it. That's what's funny about it.
Yeah, it would be funny, no doubt. Visit mid10games.com for more details. Mid10games, TENN.com for more details. Sounds like a fun time. Get a bunch of Scottish and Irish people together. It's always fun. Always good times.
No question.
Just saw on Twitter that the Titans tweeted out that they are loading up a truck full of supplies for the folks in Waverly. So good job by them.
Very cool.
Very, very cool. Love to see that stuff. So with all the good that we just talked about, what is the one thing, because it is interesting, you put out the list of names, Willie. And I think another one to add on that list is Rashawn Evans, right? Because this is a big year for him.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out
but
is he going to get a new deal, or is this going to be it for him? I do think you'll see us paying a little bit closer attention to him this year, because everybody's going to try to figure out whether he's going to be sticking around or probably on the move, like a lot of first-round picks have been. Not going to get that
and I would say right now he probably is on the move.
Oh yeah, but that's down the road. I think at least you kind of know what you have. This is the question I have. To me, I'm really wondering about Dupree, and here's why. And we mentioned this before. Joe described him in his article, which you were just talking with Joe about, as the Robin to T.J. Watt, the Batman. And it got me thinking with that. That's an interesting reference. And, of course, if you follow comic books, you know that with Robin, as he grows up, he eventually goes out on his own. That's one strand of comics, and he becomes a guy named Nightwing. I don't know if you're...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he does go off on his own. So the question is, can Bud Dupree be the Batman or be Nightwing, something, a self-sustaining guy? How much was he relying on T.J. Watt and the rest of the scheme? There's some skepticism. Set aside the major injury that he had. Just take that off to the side, and let's take him before the injury. Is he a guy that can really be what they want him to be on his own, which is a guy that no matter what you do, he is going to be a force that is going to open things up for everybody else and make the pass rush a lot better? Football Outsiders, remember you and I had this discussion, Chase, the week that Darren was on vacation. When it first came out, they had a lot of data that suggests that he got a lot of sacks, but he didn't really get consistent pressure. He had a high sack rate, but the pressure rate wasn't as high, and it did sort of lend itself to, hey, he played on a really good defense, and he was sort of the beneficiary of that.
It was similar to Vanden Bosch and Hainsworth.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
Vanden Bosch was the Robin to Albert Hainsworth being the Batman. I think that was a fair thing. So they had to spend this money on Bud Dupree. I just think that my theory will be I don't know that he's going to live up to that contract. Again, we go back to expectations. But I'm a little concerned, especially he's coming off a knee injury where he hasn't played at all. He feels good, but he hasn't had any contact or anything. What's he going to look like in especially the first 3-4 weeks of the season? Like if he doesn't get a sack, would you be completely shocked? Like he hasn't played in a long time.
I think it's a very good question because I don't know.
And yet he's making these big dollars, and it's like here's the guy that's supposed to fix the biggest problem on the team. I just think it's a major area to watch.
Well, and I mean, not only does he need to get the sacks and he needs to get the pressure, but so does Simmons, so does Landry, so does, Autry having him there now. How is that going to set up some of those guys when you have more pressure. I mean, because that's the other part of this, that we always focus in on, the pass rush needs to get better, and it became like one guy. They signed Clowney. They signed Beasley. But it's the defensive front that needed to get better as a whole unit, and I feel like on paper it has. Now you got to see the results.
Yeah. Autry, Simmons being a year more removed.
I firmly believe that Daunic Autry is going to go down as the best signing of this free agent class, just because they needed that. No offense to Daquan Jones, but they needed to upgrade that spot, and I think they did that. So
let's hope, because I haven't really seen him play much. Right?
No,
he didn't play much in the. Did he play at all in the preseason games?
Well, John Robinson's not rooting for that scenario to play out because, once again, as we've talked about on the show, Bud Dupree was the big, huge, gigantic splash this offseason. I mean, they went out and highly committed to him. They paid him the big free agent bucks. He was a big-time free agent signing. So the answer needs to be Bud Dupree, not Autry. Like, that's great if Autry turns out to have a whale of a season, but if he is the best signing in the offseason, then that means the Bud Dupree signing wasn't very good and wasn't worth, or at least to this point through a year, wasn't worth it. And so that doesn't need to be the answer. Like, I get it. I think we all should feel good about that signing and like it, but they better – John Robinson, my guess privately, is not rooting for Autry to be the best signing.
But as long as they win, that's the key. But I just think in a vacuum, it's going to be very hard for Dupree to live up to the contract. And that's part of...
Really?
I think so. Based on what he's done and based on the knee injury, I think it's a really high bar to try to hit. Because I think they would have to admit they overpaid to get him because they had to. They had to have him. And he was the best that was out there. But his past would tell you he's really not a superstar guy like a Javon Curse in his heyday or somebody like that. He hasn't been that.
That's not what Jeremy Fowler told us when we had him on.
No, he did not.
He absolutely painted the picture. He made the case that he believes he's just as good as T.J. Watt.
Okay. That's one opinion. I just think there's some conflicting.
Well, Jeremy Fowler's pretty tied into the whole Steelers and Pittsburgh scene, and in other words, he's been around them a lot over the years. And I'm just, it doesn't mean he's right. I'm just telling you what he's told us on this show.
I think time will tell on that, but I think that's the question.
Did he not say that?
No, he did. No, you're spot on. He said that before free agency opened.
Yes, that was before they signed him.
Yeah, we had him on. I think it was a couple days before.
Because I remember going, wow, well, I just moved Bud Dupree up my list of free agents that the Titans should be keying in on.
Oh, I'm not saying he's a bad player at all. I'm just saying, and it won't take much for him to be quite a bit of an upgrade over the Clowney, Beasley debacle. Sure. But how good is he? Because when you carry the price tag, there's a certain amount of expectations that go with that. Yeah. And I don't know. And he may not need to do that for the defense to be a lot better, which is really what it's all about. Just give me a defense that is much more competitive and isn't giving up 50% or over 50% on third down and has 19 sacks where they can't touch the quarterback. If it just gets reasonably better, then the results should be what they want.
Yeah, I think he needs to be a difference maker, no doubt, and needs to put up those numbers. But I'll go back to something that I've said, that I think the homegrown player on the roster in Jeffrey Simmons is going to be the catalyst and needs to be the catalyst. He has to be the catalyst for this defense. And I predict that he's going to have a big year. We're going to be talking about him a lot in a lot of good ways, and that in turn has a trickle-down effect to the rest of that defensive front.
Let me just read you, Darren,
let's do it on the other. Let's do it on those. Yeah. We'll come back. Hour number 3 next. Third hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase presented by Rashawn CBD. Rashawn CBD, products curated for life. Don't forget to go to thegamenashville.com/deals to check out Nashville's best deals. You'll see it on there. Save cash with the purchase of a $10 gift card for Retro Snow for only $5. Addicts would love that. Nashville's original shaved ice truck, bringing back snowballs with creativity and pure cane sugar, dreaming up new flavor combinations and adding fresh, delicious toppings. What makes us Retro Snow and Nashville's original shaved ice truck. All you have to do is go visit their first ever permanent location in the Nations at 806 51st Avenue North. They're open Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. and Saturday and Sundays from 2 to 7 p.m. Check out Retro Snow's truck schedule at retrosnowtruck.com. So you can get that $10 for $5. Other deals include half off a $50 gift card at Fat Cat Slims, half off a $25 gift card for Joyland in East Nashville. Get your deals now while they last at thegamenashville.com/deals. All right, interesting article by Mike Sando on ESPN. So, Willie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll discuss.
Mike Sando has written some really good stuff over the last week. Mike Sando, to remind people, is the guy that does the quarterback tiers every year. And so we've had him on the last couple of years to talk about is Ryan Tannehill / Marcus Mariota going back a couple of years. What tier are they? Ryan Tannehill, for those that didn't see his latest thing, what he does is he polls a number of football executives. This is not Mike Sando, his opinion. This is a consensus of what he puts together, polling NFL executives, unnamed people. He had Ryan Tannehill, a second-tier quarterback, a lot closer to the third tier than the first tier. That was an interesting thing. So what he's done here is he had 5 executives rank the AFC teams 1 through 16 based on 5 executives' opinions and putting the rankings together and getting an average. And some of this won't surprise you at all. Some of it might spark some debate, which is the idea here.
Right.
And then there's some quotes from the unnamed executives, like there are for the quarterbacks. Needless to say, the Chiefs were number 1 going away. They got straight number 1s across the board. Until somebody beats them, they're going to be the odds-on favorite. Not a surprise there. The Bills were number 2. Everybody voted for the Bills number 2 except for one who had them number 3. So obviously they're the clear choice for number 2. Number 3 might surprise you a little bit. They went with the Ravens as number 3, which I think if you go across into different predictions, you get a bigger mix of Ravens versus Browns versus Steelers in the mix there. But they went with the Ravens number 3. They went with the Browns number 4 in the entire AFC.
Wow.
Yep.
They went with the Colts number 5, the Chargers number 6, and then the Titans number 7. And in the Titans got a vote for number 2. The Titans also got a vote for number 10. So they were much more divided on the Titans. These 5 experts or executives. And here's where they're coming from. The Titans were the only team in either conference, because they did this for the NFC as well, to get votes as high as number 2 and as low as number 10. And that comes to all of the things that we've been discussing the entire preseason. All these question marks with the changes to the defense. Did they upgrade sufficiently? How much will another big factor be, losing Arthur Smith? Well, what does that look like with Todd Downing?
Which there's quotes about that.
There's quotes, and here's one. I discounted them because I don't know about their coaching. I love Mike Vrabel, but without Arthur Smith, that's concerning. If he were there with Tannehill, I'd probably give Tannehill a better mark, but I'm not sold. The voter that ranked the Titans second liked the defensive upgrades with Janoris Jenkins, Bud Dupree, John Simon, who is
he's not
even there.
They cut him.
So he liked John Simon, but John Simon won't be part of this equation here. They have gotten their pass rusher, and it says Simon should work in their favor after I thought Harold Lang
again not on the roster.
So I guess he did this before the final cuts.
Yeah.
He loves Jeffrey Simmons. I think Jeffrey Simmons is one of the best young defensive linemen in the league. that no one talks about. They like the fact that you're going to face Houston twice, in theory, without Deshaun Watson, who carved them up twice. Jonnu Smith is a big loss for them. They lose Arthur Smith, Corey Davis, and you wonder at what point does the wear and tear catch up to the running back Derrick Henry? That's the voter who had Tennessee 7th. There are two big acquisitions. Bud Dupree and Caleb Farley have health questions, as does Julio Jones. This is probably the year where you see a little attrition. So they had the Patriots 8th, the Titans 7, the Chargers 6. Now, so do you think that's fair?
How in the world could you have those question marks about the Titans and not have the same question marks and more about the Chargers? Like Justin Herbert, okay, let's see it again. Austin Eckler, fantastic, gets hurt. Okay, can he stay healthy? Keenan Allen's also been hurt over the years. They lose Hunter Henry. They've lost Melvin Ingram on defense. I get it. He was always hurt too. But their defense was always hurt. Maybe they've changed doctors. Remember, I think I even questioned, who's their medical staff where all these guys are lost for the season before they really even get started or just as they get started. The Chargers constantly get hurt. They haven't proven anything.
The consensus on the Chargers.
So why?
The consensus on the Chargers is that they have underachieved. They were poorly coached. The game management was poor. The special teams could not have been worse.
They couldn't win a close game.
No doubt about it. And they feel like they will do better in this area, and they have a talent base that's worthy of that. So I don't know if I would go with that. Chargers over Titans, and they clearly had the Colts over the Titans, despite all of the stuff that's happened with Wentz here.
Well,
Wentz has had, 2 practices basically with the team.
Yeah.
What's interesting is he includes a table that has, where each voter, what they voted for each team. And I think that's interesting to look at because the Chargers, they have some 10s. I have a 10 and 11, but then a 6, 4, and a 6.
Yeah, there's a wide range of opinions on the Chargers.
Voter 4 is probably the most interesting one to me because they seem all over the place. Like they seem they seem to because look at Cleveland, which is the 4th ranked team. They had Cleveland at 9 in their rankings. Mm-hmm. They had the Titans at 10 in their rankings. Baltimore, which is 3rd. Voter 4 had Baltimore at 7. It was the only one where the rest were 3, 4, 3, 3. Then he had Baltimore at 7. So it's kind of cool to be able to see, and you obviously don't know who these people are, but cool to see where they go, and you can kind of get an idea of how they're thinking. But I still don't understand this fascination with the Colts. I feel like there are a lot of people that yes, they made some interesting moves, but the biggest question mark is the quarterback. And like you said, he's maybe had 2 practices. So exactly what do they have in Carson Wentz?
T.Y. Hilton's been hurt.
T.Y. Hilton's been hurt. The offensive line has a lot of questions with retiring players and being banged up. So I don't know. There's this.
I'll tell you where I go with this that I have questions about. I don't know how you could have 2 in the North above the Titans, and I'm going to tell you why. Ravens and the Browns. That division is in my opinion, way better than the AFC South. It's way better. I think Cincinnati, if they can stay healthy, their quarterbacks stay healthy, they're going to be a much improved team. Are they going to be a playoff team? No, but they're going to be a hard out for teams.
Agreed.
It's interesting because the voters, the five voters in this, do not think
have them
Cincinnati
below Jacksonville.
Yeah, they have them below Jacksonville.
Well, I don't see that. I don't see that. I'm going to disagree, at least for a year. Okay. The Browns and the Ravens. So you're going to have 2 teams in the North. Which Pittsburgh, I think people are writing off Pittsburgh. I just think that is a dangerous game to get in the business of writing off the Steelers. You know why? Because they've got a long, long, long history, decades upon decades, of just doing a whole lot of winning. And I just don't know how you can write them off. I get it. I know what the knocks are. But didn't they try to address one of the knocks in Najee Harris? If you believe Najee Harris is going to have a big season for the Steelers running the football, Well, you've already changed things from last year already because they could not run the football at all last year. Has anything changed with their quarterback? No. Big Ben's still a statue. He cannot move whatsoever. But all their receivers are still intact. I mean, what's changed? They lose Bud Dupree on defense. That's a team that started off 11-0 last year, and people are just throwing them out with the trash. And I just think that is a dangerous game to get into. I'm not predicting them to win the division, but to just write off the Steelers based on what? They've had 3 coaches in the history of their franchise? I mean, they're kind of good. That tells you they're always good. So I don't know how you could have 2 teams. Okay, 1, fine. But they're going to beat each other up. I mean, you got 4 teams that are really good in that division where the Texans are going to stink. Most people believe the Jags are going to stink, and the Colts are kind of a wild card of where their season's going.
Pittsburgh is 9th. New England is 8th. And I think you have a lot of debate amongst executives on, hey, if it goes right, maybe the Patriots could be really good. And I think you have some people that are still bullish like you are, Darren, on the Steelers. But remember, all 3 of them made the playoffs last year. 2 years in a row, 3 teams from the same division making the playoffs. That's a tough thing to
buy
do.
That. Yep.
Tough thing to do. So they are going to beat each other up. I agree. And the schedule is not really talked about much in this particular exercise, but I think it's a big factor. Now, let me give you a different angle, too. Mike Sando also has this. He classified tiers of teams.
Yeah.
He has the Super 6, the 6 true Super Bowl contenders, based on all of his homework that he's done here. Okay? Some are no-brainers, the Chiefs, the Bucks, the Packers, and then he has these 3 as Super Bowl contenders, a tier ahead of everybody else. Like everybody could have blindfolded or whatever, just off the top of your head. You would definitely say Packers,
so Chiefs, Bucks.
Packers, Bucks, Chiefs.
Okay,
right? Those are no-brainers, right?
Yep.
Bills, Seahawks, Rams, all in the top tier, above all else.
Bills, I agree.
We agree.
With.
Seahawks, no,
I don't know. I don't agree with Seahawks.
I'm not willing to put them there. Nope.
Rams.
I mean,
remember they play in the same division.
Yeah, I'm on the Rams bandwagon.
I am on the Rams bandwagon. I will tell you, I am.
Yep.
So you're not so much on the Seahawks?
No.
Both of you are a little down.
Listen, this stuff that happened with Russell Wilson in the offseason and the rumors flying, and I get it that they're rumors, but that to me feels like there was some smoke, and I don't know if that's completely gone away. So
okay.
I think you got to pay attention to that.
Bills, you guys in on that?
I'm in on
top
the Bills.
tier?
Yep.
All right. Then the next category that Sando has, Furious 4. These teams can genuinely be perplexed, even offended, that anyone would exclude them from the Super 6. But we have our reasons.
The Titans should be in that category.
Yep.
You guys think that the Titans?
I think they should
Yes,
be. I think you're going to tell me they're
should
not, but I think they should be.
The Titans are
Okay.
in that category. Let's see how Ryan Tannehill and the offense fare without Arthur Smith. How close does Derrick Henry come to hitting the wall that frequently awaits high-volume running backs? That's an obvious one. The other 3 teams in the Furious 4. Can you guess?
Okay, I was going to say, let us guess the other 3 teams. So
we're talking about top 10. Remember, we did the top 10 every week last year, so this would round out the top 10.
So give us the top teams. What was it, 6?
The Super 6.
Super 6. Give us those
Chiefs,
teams again.
Bucks, Packers, no-brainers.
Yep. No-brainers.
Bills,
Seahawks.
kind of a no-brainer. Seahawks and Rams.
Okay. So the next tier would be
the Titans, and then 3 others.
Well, based on what we've already heard, it sounds like there's people that are high on the Chargers. So so let's go with Colts.
I'll say Colts. Yeah, I was going to say Colts.
Titans and Colts are on that list.
That is what's really interesting, is that Sando has his executives, right? They told him they voted the Colts and the Chargers ahead of the Titans. But neither of those teams are in the Furious 4.
What?
Really?
This shows you how debatable this is.
Interesting.
Browns.
Because remember, you have the NFC teams, figured into this too.
Browns are on that list.
Browns are in there.
Ravens are on that list.
Yes, Browns, Ravens.
Yeah, see, I think they're
all
all
on the list.
I think they might all be AFC.
There is one more team.
This is where I think this may be where the New England, the Patriot thing comes into play. But it could be the Steelers. I'm going on two teams with lots of winning for decades.
You know what?
It's one of these two. It's Steelers or Patriots.
49ers.
Interestingly enough, they did have the 49ers as in the Furious Four. It's not clear what the 49ers are going to get from their quarterbacks. Lingering injury concerns are another consideration, but they believe in the talent there. Now, what's interesting is you put them in the Furious Four. That's three of the three teams in the same division
in the
top 10.
Like, you're going to beat each other up. Like, you can't have that.
And aside, the Titans play all of the teams in that division. So that just shows you how tough the Titans' schedule is on paper.
A lot of people are looking at the 49ers. And listen, I think they have a good head coach in Shanahan. I think John Lynch has done a tremendous job as a GM. They certainly they went to the Super Bowl, 2 years ago. So I get it. But in last year was injury. 3 years ago, I guess it was injuries that plagued them. And so everybody's kind of thinking, all right, well, they're healthy now, and they've tweaked a few things. Kittle's going to be back. But they're also like, is this two-quarterback thing going to work? Isn't there a quarterback controversy? Are they going to ride Jimmy G?
I just don't think
Lance going to take over?
I think there's too many questions for the 49ers to put them on the same tier as Titans, Browns, Ravens.
Okay, so here is the defense to that, because first I was going to say that's exactly – my question was, how can you have three of the four in basically the two top tiers? But with that being said, I think the difference is we all believe the AFC is a lot better than the NFC.
Correct.
Deeper.
So, once again, probably the division winner in the East, that's all it's going to be, right? Because nobody believes there's any powerhouse team in that Dallas, Philadelphia, Washington division, Giants division, right? It's like the division winner, and that's it.
You will not find somebody predicting two teams out of that division making the playoffs.
Okay, so let's go to the Packers division. Detroit, no. Minnesota?
No. I'm not.
Shaky.
I don't think
Chicago? No,
shaky.
Probably not. Probably not. So there again, division winner, that's it. Now here's the interesting one, okay? We all get it. Bucks. Carolina? No. Right? No Carolina.
Better, but no.
Atlanta? No. What about New Orleans? It's probably a no.
Okay.
It's a no for me. So couldn't you say that all the other divisions might only be represented by their division winner?
Yeah, it's thin. It's not a deep. It is not a deep NFC. It's much more wide open once you get to that last wild card.
But here's the other part of the equation. You get starting last year, you get the extra team, so that that changes things too.
That's
there's
true.
An extra wild
That's right.
card.
So you get there's 7
teams.
teams.
There's more of a chance that 3 teams can make it.
So maybe Minnesota is that team.
Maybe.
Well, hypothetically speaking, the West could get all 4 in.
Well, that
could
too.
You?
Yeah,
I guess
they
you're
could.
Right. Yeah,
they totally could.
Wild. All 4.
That would be something.
Okay, so let's finish the tiers. We mentioned the Furious 4. To round out the top 10 overall, they have Ravens, Browns, 49ers, and Titans. The next tier is tier 3. You're saying there's a chance. They have teams that we've mentioned. We can envision scenarios where these teams rank among the top contenders, but crash and burn scenarios are also in play. They have the Colts. They have the Patriots. They have the Steelers. They have the Chargers, who we've mentioned.
Cardinals.
And they also throw in there the Saints. No, they do not have the Cardinals in there. They have the Saints. So, do we agree with that? Those teams in the next tier, or would you have any of those teams in a tier above or below?
Saints,
Colts, Patriots, Steelers, Saints, Chargers. So these are this is now teams 11 through 15.
I would go with the Cardinals before I would go with the Saints.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in the Saints this year.
Okay. Jameis Winston expands the passing menu for Sean Payton relative to the final seasons of a physically declining Drew Brees. Winston also expands the volatility menu. Yeah. This could go either way. That's why they have them in.
I think we're going to find out how
Jameis
good
Winston
of a coach
has proven to be an 8-8 quarterback.
Right.
That's what his teams. And by the way, his number one target isn't even available, and who knows if he's even going to play this year. Isn't even available until the month of October.
Do we need to check the Saints desk? Let's check with the Saints desk.
Hang on, before you say that. Here's the thing. I want to see him with in a second year with Sean Payton. He only had 1 year with Bruce Arians. And I think Bruce Arians is the best coach to this point till he goes to the Saints that he's ever had. Now, what is the Sean Payton effect a true thing? I think this is going to be a test of what does Sean Payton look like without Drew Brees. All right, Saints
fair.
desk.
Yeah, it's the Saints desk here. I say it's fair. The question
are they in the correct tier? Third tier?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's fair, and it's all going to be dependent on what Jameis Winston does, because this might be the best all-around defensive unit Jameis Winston's ever had at his disposal. The Saints were an elite defensive team last year, and that's without forcing a ton of turnovers, which is one of those things that year to year, that is one thing that isn't necessarily constant because it does require a little bit of luck. They still have Cameron Jordan, who has had the second most sacks in the NFL since 2017, behind only Aaron Donald. Demario Davis, who's one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL, still there. They still have a really good secondary despite losing Jackrabbit Jenkins. The defense is still there, and that's going to keep them in a lot of games that Jameis Winston would typically throw you out of with multiple interceptions. But if he can just cut down the interceptions, Sean Payton's a quarterback whisperer. I feel at least confident enough, even with some limited weapons, that Kamara's still a matchup nightmare, and Marquez Callaway did kind of look pretty good.
Yeah, let's see it. Let's see it on Sunday.
Okay,
when it counts.
This is another.
Let me remind you.
He was good last
though.
year. Last year, the same thing happened with the receiving core last year. Michael Thomas didn't play for most of the year because of that injury, and the receiving core was still good because Sean Payton, if there's anything he does really, really well as an offensive mind, it's just putting you in positions where you're going to be able to succeed and knowing his personnel.
Smart.
But I will remind you, though, that Tampa defense, as we've talked about, because when all the praise was coming out last year, it was like, wait a minute. This didn't just happen this year. That Jameis Winston year, that Tampa Bay team came in here and was the number one defense against the run. They finished the season the number one defense against the run in the NFL. So that Tampa defense was good that year.
But they weren't as good 2 years ago with Winston there. They were good, and Shaq Barrett was good, and they still had a lot of pieces. But drafting Winfield helped. The secondary got a lot better. And like you said, the run defense got a lot better from 1 year to the next. They did make a big step as a unit last year comparatively, even though a lot of the same players were there.
Yeah.
Can I throw out a wild and wacky scenario that I think could happen?
Wait, do we need to take a break before you? If it's wild and wacky, we might need a minute. We might need a minute.
Okay.
I just prepare myself mentally for the wild and wacky.
We'll do that on the other side, but right now, let's fire up the tailgates. The NFL is back. Get in on all the action before opening night kicks off with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. And with the NFL returning, DraftKings is giving all customers the opportunity to participate in this year's no-brainer offer. DraftKings Sportsbook has moved the spread to the Tampa Bay game. Remember, they are hosting Dallas on Thursday night to plus 73 for all customers. That means you can still cash in as long as the reigning champs don't lose by 74 points against Dallas. If you haven't tried DraftKings yet, don't miss out. DraftKings is giving new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they bet $1 or more on any football game. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code 1025game. New customers bet $1 or more on any football game and receive $200 in free bets instantly by using that promo code 1025game. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. You must be 21 years of age or older. Tennessee only. Free bet promotion for new customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Max wager limits apply. One per customer. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, presented by Curation CBD. Curation CBD products curated for life. Don't forget to tune in this weekend. We've got our NFL Game of the Week right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. That's brought to you by Red Spirits and Wine in Bellevue. And this week's game will be the Browns and the Chiefs. Coverage begins at 2:45 p.m., a 3:25 kickoff. Okay. Wild and wacky stuff.
Yes.
According to Chase.
All right. And Ryan Porth just said, like, he's curious of where I'm going with this. I'm prepared
now. I'm prepared now for the wild and wacky.
Yeah. So here we go.
I had to get my mind, in the right place.
We were just talking about the Saints. Let's say that this season doesn't go well, that Jameis is awful, and they're trying to figure out that quarterback position. They miss the playoffs. It's just not good. After this year, Sean Payton has only 1 year left on his contract. So they go through this year. It's not good. And they just go, Sean Payton and the Saints go, you know what? It's been a good run. Let's you guys are probably about to go into a rebuild. Let's call it a day. They mutually agree to part ways. Sean Payton is now available. There's a team that he has always been linked to. They've been side-eyeing each other for 10 years. Jerry fires McCarthy because that's not going to work in the long run. It's not going to work. I mean, they might win the division by default, but he's an idiot. And Sean Payton ends up in Dallas. That's my wild and wacky scenario.
Folks, if you're on Twitter, it's at Chase on Game. If you're upset that Chase has taken this conversation to the Dallas Cowboys, it's at Chase on
He went there.
Game. Yeah.
Listen, I prefaced it by saying it's wild and wacky, but
I don't even think it's that wild.
What's wild and wacky about it? You just said it's been out there for a long time. What's wild and wacky
right,
about
but I mean, I still would say that it's probably got a 25% or less chance of happening, but it, now maybe more so in 2 years when his contract's actually up, but I'm saying now, I'm saying after this year that it would happen. So you think it's got more of a shot of happening than wild and wacky?
Well, let's take part of the equation. Is how do the Cowboys do in the next couple of years, especially while Mike McCarthy is the coach? That, as we know, is a very winnable division, which brings us back to the tiers, as what we're talking about here. They have the NFC East teams, or I say Mike Sando from The Athletic, has the NFC East teams in their own separate tier.
They get their own category.
Because he basically believes, well, I think we all believe, that the winner of that division is going to the playoffs and nobody else in that division is going to do it. So he has the Cowboys, Washington, Philly, and the Giants all in there in one little one little box. And there's not a whole lot of difference between any of them, just like we found out last year. And do we think it's any different this year? Who? I guess we haven't made our official predictions, but are you guys leaning any one direction? You could make an argument for any of the four.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Dallas probably, like I said, wins by default. If Dak, Darren, you threw it out yesterday. You're worried about the shoulder.
I'm very worried about Dak Prescott.
And it's a realistic concern that there's something wrong with the shoulder, that could haunt them. And what they got behind him is not Andy Dalton. I know they picked up Will Grier, but Will Grier is not Andy Dalton. So they've downgraded there when they should have upgraded. Zeke, who knows what he is? Can he get back to what he was, or is the running back position hitting him at this point? Can Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, add to the offense? But
that's not even you're bringing up the good. What about that lousy defense?
Yeah,
it was
defense.
really bad.
That was horrific. And if it wasn't for the Titans, the Cowboys, Cowboys and Titans had the worst defenses in the league last year. So what about that?
Well, yeah. I agree. Like, it was bad.
I'm really surprised how many people I've seen actually predicting the Giants to win that division.
Yeah,
I would not have thought that, but some people that I have to say I respect.
I believe in Washington probably more.
I would take
Washington's got the defense, and then of course they have the Fitzmagic show, which we know what can happen there.
And they have
the Eagles have, by all all the assessments, very good offensive and defensive lines, but skill positions, big question
quarterback.
mark. Yeah, big question marks there.
I mean, well, and here's the other factor in that division.
They're not good teams, but somebody's going to win the division.
Yeah,
Somebody.
And Washington has the best coach in the division.
You think so?
Ron Rivera is the best coach in the division.
Okay.
By far.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't really think that's an argument. I mean, I know that McCarthy has the trophy.
No, McCarthy is, Willie knows. I said for many, many years that I thought he was overrated in Green Bay when they were winning double-digit games every season. I thought he was overrated because he should have been doing more than that. I mean, he does not impress me at all. I do not. I think it's going to be short-lived in Dallas. I just don't think he's a very good head coach. I just don't.
Okay,
real quick. The key
and
with
he doesn't
Dallas,
have Aaron Rodgers anymore. So
right. The key with Dallas's defense is going to be the health of Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith, and can Micah Parsons make an impact as a rookie at Penn State? Okay, those three guys.
I don't know who really deserves to be the favorite in that division because I truly believe get out a dartboard, put the names up there, and throw darts because I wouldn't be surprised if any of them came out of that division. I just think it's a crapshoot division. I have no idea. I don't think any of them are good. I don't think any of them are horrible. I just think they're all kind of meh.
That's why Mike Sando has them in their separate tier, which is tier number 5 overall. The Mighty Asterisks is what he calls them. Basically, somebody's got to win this division. So we skipped. So just for people that are just joining us, the first tier he has is the Super 6. Chiefs, Bucks, Packers, Bills, Seahawks, Rams. The second tier is the Ravens, Browns, 49ers, and Titans. The third tier, Colts, Patriots, Steelers, Saints, Chargers.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Now the fourth tier we haven't talked about yet. 3 teams, all from the AFC. And he says, drifting in the wind. It's hard to tell if these teams are coming or going. They could be stuck in the middle. 3 AFC teams.
I'm looking at it. So
AFC drifting in the wind.
And it's interesting he puts these 3 teams above a couple other teams that he could have put in
Broncos drifting in the wind?
Broncos are in there as a drifting in the wind. And this is what a lot of people are saying about the Broncos. We know that the quarterback situation is what it is, but the defense could be one of the top defenses in the NFL is what some people are saying. And, of course, they have very skilled and young talent on offense, but can they put it all together at the quarterback position? But if you play great defense, you can win some games.
What's Von Miller? Is Von Miller the same Von Miller?
It's a good question.
I don't know. Raiders are drifting in the wind.
No question. Mm-hmm. No question. That is the classic drifting in the wind. A lot of criticism of how they've handled all the draft picks that they've picked up and how they've maneuvered. So has there been a change? Are they any better? Are they coming or going? There's this. Nobody seems to really be riding their train.
The stat they used there was really interesting, too. They're 32nd in special teams and defensive EPA in the last 3 years?
Yep.
Explains a lot.
You can't get much lower than that. You can't get any lower than that.
No, you can't. You can't.
And then
that's a fact. Well, let me guess the third. I'm going to say the third drifter is the Dolphins.
Correct.
Nailed it.
Big questions about Tua. The other thing is that they had huge success in the turnover game.
Yep. Special teams,
and can you
turnovers.
And can you replicate that? That's hard to do every year. You can't count on that every year, so they might have to compensate. And there's a lot of questions as to whether they can. So then there's a team in the 6th tier, only one team.
Which is what? What's the
This team could be better than the 3 teams that we just mentioned.
But what's it called? The tier.
The
asterisk envy.
Oh. Trying to think of the teams we haven't named. Is that the Bears?
They are on the Bears are on the next tier, whistling past the graveyard, the 7th tier.
Well, if you read the full description, it'll give it to him.
Oh. I know, so I can't do that.
I don't have it in front of
me. They have
so.
the Bears and the Vikings on the 7th tier.
Whistling past the graveyard.
Whistling past the graveyard. Just thinking that, hey, you play in the NFC North, so you got the Packers, and then can you just, You have the Lions on the other side in the ninth. They're in the ninth tier, the lowest tier that there is. By the way, we'll just give it away. Lions, Texans, Jets, Bengals on the lowest draft order dreamers. That's the ninth and final tier.
Oh, so
that's why the Vikings and the Bears, like, okay, they're mediocre. Somebody's going to finish second. Could you piece together a 10-win year and maybe slide into the wild card? In the NFC, you can. In the NFC, you can.
Well, and honestly, I would put Are you giving up? You want me to give it to you? In this sixth tier?
Let's just say this, Darren. We've talked about this team a lot this week.
And we'll continue to talk about them this week.
Arizona?
There you go.
Arizona.
It's
not Arizona's fault that the Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers reside in the same division.
I could make an argument that the Bears could be in that category if the quarterback is that, like, they know early on that, all right, they have it at quarterback, and it's got to be Fields. But we've talked about it before, in where Chicago and Arizona, I think, are similar. They've been held back by coaching and then the GM. That's what has held them back, and may continue to hold them back. But if they go to Fields within the first month of the season, and he just turns out to be it, and like they've found it, he can play at the next level right away, then they might have the pieces to make things interesting and be there.
I could also say Minnesota could be in that category.
See, I like Zimmer. I do.
But, I mean, look, you've got Dalvin Cook, man. Dalvin Cook can mask problems.
But you have Kirk Cousins, and he creates a lot of those problems.
But you still got Thielen and Justin Jefferson. So, I mean.
I could see it.
I mean,
somebody's going to finish second.
Look, if you can run the ball effectively, you can mask problems.
And the Bears can have a good defense. So those are I can see why you put the Vikings and the Bears sort of in the same tier of, they're not great, but if everything goes well, they could be okay. They could be okay.
Yeah.
And then the final tier that we haven't hit, then we'll take a break. Optimistic overhauls, Falcons, Panthers. They put the Jaguars in the 8th tier, not the 9th tier.
Interesting.
Because some people really think that Trevor Lawrence will be an instant
I'm okay with that.
success.
Yeah, I don't think they're necessarily in the chasing the first draft pick anymore. I mean, but they're not a playoff team. They're still they're a couple years away.
Okay.
All right. It is amazing that 2 years ago I was saying tank for Trevor. Titans suck for Trevor, and here they are. Trevor goes number 1 to Jacksonville, and the Titans are, arguably Super Bowl contenders. So it's crazy. Who knew at the time? Remember, I'm saying that Mariota was the quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. So that just tells you, like, who could have ever seen?
You never know
how Ryan Tannehill and by the way, Derrick Henry had not exploded yet, right? He'd not turned into the real back that he is today. So, gosh, it's amazing what a couple years will do. Don't forget, Clark Lee will begin our final hour. We'll head over to West End, but we'll come back and wrap up hour number 3 next. Don't forget to tune in to Nashville Sounds Baseball tonight on 94.9. Sounds begin a 6-game homestand at First Horizon Park against Memphis. Pre-game show begins at 6:50. First pitch at 7:05 p.m. Sounds Baseball presented by 312 Pizza Company and Farm Bureau Health Plans. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Clark Lee spoke to the media today, and he will speak with us coming up in about 10 minutes or so when we head over to West End and begin the final hour. But Clark Lee said that pass game coordinator Joey Lynch is the one that's been calling the plays and has been doing so since the first week of preseason practice. And the reason I bring that up is because Joey Lynch is not the OC. Was it David Ray? Is that right? How you say his last name? The OC?
Yeah, Ray.
Yeah,
Ray.
David Ray. Is that a big deal or not a big deal?
Well, when you struggle like they did, and you look as disjointed as they did, I think it's a big deal. I think it's pretty urgent. When you have that little success, I think people are going to be asking a lot of questions.
Because I've seen a lot of people saying stuff on Twitter about that quote that was put out there when he was speaking to the media today. Because, yes, like you said, they had major struggles on offense against East Tennessee State. And, he's saying, hey, it's the pass game coordinator that's calling the plays, not the OC, David Ray. I don't know. Just thought I would bring that up.
I mean,
is that a big deal? Not a big deal.
I don't. I guess I can't really say if that's a big deal or not a big deal because I don't know what the conversations were like when he was putting the staff together. I mean, was that the? I mean, I assume that was kind of the plan.
It's all based on the result of the game because if he'd have said that and they had won 27-3,
yeah,
then everybody go, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
But when you score 3, people are going to be, wait a minute, the offensive coordinator is not calling the plays. What's going on?
But Joey Lynch is the pass game coordinator and the quarterbacks coach, and so you can go, all right. Well, he's having the most contact with the QBs, and that's obviously so maybe the communication between those two was better, and therefore he'll call the plays. So I don't know.
Well, we'll ask Coach Lee at 1:00 and just get him to expound.
Yeah. I also saw where ESPN's Todd McShay, did you guys see this, has announced he's going to take some time away from the sidelines to focus on his health? I don't know the story.
I don't either. And that's new
I didn't
because
know anything about that.
We're close colleagues with Richard Deitch, and he's got a really good podcast. He had a long interview with Molly McGrath, who was
doing the game
last night. Usually it's Molly on one sideline and Todd McShay on the other. And she did not indicate anything like that. Like Todd McShay is, of course, a unique sideline guy where he's a talent evaluator, draft guy. So there was no hint during that interview, which was just last week, that was coming.
So I just pulled this up from 2 days ago, Saturday Down South, that there was a great deal of concern on social media about him and how he appeared during the Alabama Miami game, and there's a clip on Twitter. So it references that if you recall, McShay had to exit the Wisconsin Northwestern broadcast last year due to an illness. He would return to the sidelines for his next assignment the following weekend. The exact illness of the ESPN draft expert was undisclosed, but he was able to work the remainder of his games in 2020 without further incident. However, there's a great deal of concern following his latest sideline report, so his condition is certainly worth keeping an eye on as the Crimson Tide and Hurricanes play each other in Atlanta. I have not seen this. I missed that. Totally missed it. So I haven't seen this.
I didn't pay close enough attention to the Alabama-Miami-Florida game because it was never a game to really, know one way or the other. So that's interesting. I just thought I would pass that along because I wasn't aware of anything. So So you said he left that game, or he finished
he finished the game. He left a year before there was a game that he left due to an illness.
But he finished the game on Saturday.
Correct.
And now is stepping away.
But that was his team last night. Was he in there at all last night?
No.
Yeah.
Definitely
See, that
not
was
last night.
he was scheduled to be. That's his announcing team.
So that's probably why the announcement came out today, because people were wondering probably why, like you said, Molly McGrath was doing it by herself. Yeah. Okay. Don't know what's going on, but hopefully he gets better, whatever's happening.
Now, I should say that I think the regular routine, because, of course, that last night was Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit. They're not always going to be doing the game. So usually it's McDonough, Sean McDonough, Todd Blackledge, Todd McShay, and Molly McGrath is usually the group.
Well, doesn't Reese do the Thursday game usually?
I think that's right.
And they have like a rotating group of color analysts, and Herbstreit's been a part of that some.
It's just really interesting to read how they divvy up the teams, and of course one of the things Richard was talking about was the domino effect of Maria Taylor leaving ESPN and how that shook up sideline reporters, etc.
You guys like Reese Davis doing games?
Yeah, sure. He's okay.
Yeah. What about Tessitore?
I think Joe's really good.
Very good. Very good college announcer.
I like how he knows. So you have some announcers that they never dumb it down for you, and then you have some announcers that do it too much. And I think he knows when he needs to, when he needs to. He knows the right time to do that. I like how he explains things. But, there are times where he's like, okay, I know you're intelligent, so I'm going to explain it this way. And then there are times where he will be very thoughtful in how he explains it to try and dumb it down a little bit.
I think Reese Davis does well as a play-by-play guy for a guy that really that's not his strong suit. He's always been a Sports Center host guy.
But I love him on game day.
Yeah, I think he's a steady play-by-play guy. I think Joe Tessitore is an excellent straight-up play-by-play announcer in his own. That's his thing.
I thought it was. I'll tell you where I gave him a check mark and a gold star, which we already talked about yesterday on the show. When he came back to basically explain to the audience what had just happened with Brian Kelly's comments.
Yes.
I thought that was
a good save.
I thought that was I thought that was outstanding for him to basically explain to the audience that probably so many people had no clue what the hell just happened with Brian Kelly, like Chase admitted yesterday, that I knew. I sat there and was like, oh, he's trying to do a John McKay bit. But for him to come back and then tell people that, I thought that was well done.
Yeah, so you know what I did? Like when he said that, I go, oh, and I pulled out my phone and I YouTubed it, and like it all made sense.
Like I said, poorly executed, but he tried to use the execution joke in that bit, but it was poorly executed. But I thought it was good on Joe Tessitore to come back and explain what he was doing. Because I don't know how many people would, it's like now that it's been done and we've talked about it, everybody's probably thinking, well, that's the obvious thing to do. I did not think of it. I was like, oh, good for him. Good for him for doing that. I didn't expect him to do that, but he did. And I'm not sure everybody does that. I don't know, Willie, you may disagree, but I'm not sure everybody does that.
No, I don't think everybody does that.
That's why I like him. I think he's good at
sometimes I've been up there where you get sidetracked. Maybe the producer mentions something, and you don't even listen. You're not even listening 100% to every word the coach is saying. So I think that's a good lesson for play-by-play guys. Is as much as you can. Like, there's nothing you can do if the producer comes in your ear and say, "Hey, Joe, when you get it back, you're going to throw it to a break, or you're going to throw it to Sports Center." But fortunately for him, Joe was listening to the interview, and as soon as he said it, he was thinking, "Okay, this is what we need to do. I need to say something here."
Yep. All right, we'll come back. We'll head over to West End. We'll start the final hour with Vanderbilt head football coach Clark Lee. That's next. Final hour. Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on this gorgeous Tuesday afternoon. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic, Chase McCabe with you. If you want to win a pair of tickets to see Stanford and Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt Stadium in a couple of weeks, that'll be Saturday, September 18th, head over to YouTube and subscribe to our 1025 The Game YouTube page, and you'll enter to win a way into that game. One winner will be chosen by next Monday, September 13th. Let's welcome in Vanderbilt head football coach Clark Lee. He is on the line with us. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. Thanks for doing this. We've talked to you since you've taken on this job and even leading up to this game. You knew the challenges. You knew the landscape. Are the challenges everything you thought it was going to be, Clark, or is it maybe even a little bit steeper climb than you initially anticipated?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say a steeper climb. I mean, I think the challenges of redirecting and rebuilding and growing anew is always going to they're always going to be significant. I think we sometimes want to convince ourselves that we're further along than we are, or that it's going to be easier than we maybe initially thought. But I mean, the truth is, this is what we signed up for, and Saturday was disappointing for everybody involved. But yet, to me, it's an important moment for us as a program to redirect from. And the sooner we get over the sting of it, the sooner we get over the ego protection involved, and just the self-pity. It's like this is our moment, and we gotta take it. We gotta learn from it. We gotta understand that it represents where we are, but not where we're headed. And we gotta put the experience to use this week to prepare for a game against Colorado State on the road that's going to be tough.
Yeah, coaches, as you know, have said that you learn the most about your team in between weeks 1 and 2. So with that being said, what are you hoping to learn going into week 2 about your team?
Well, I want to see. Obviously, I want to see improvement. I mean, we have to start the game against Colorado State prepared to pounce, to take the fight to the opponent. And it wasn't a lack of effort on Saturday in my mind as I watched from the sideline, but there was a lack of intensity in our execution. And particularly, I mean, look, to win games at this level, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. It's going to require the facing down of adversity. And, I feel like we've growth in this program, in our practices, in our preparation. You see a level of compete. You see a level of spirit and enthusiasm that we've been able to sustain. And early in fall camp, like we had a couple of days where, I felt like it looked like survival mode. I mean, literally, we're learning to do everything at a high level to facilitate the results we want. But, I did not feel like in the middle of the game on Saturday, as adversity set in, once East Tennessee State scored a touchdown, I didn't feel like that we were ready to counterpunch. It was almost like the scoreboard, just took a little bit of that enthusiasm, that energy from us, and we have to get over that. I mean, let go of everything that we've learned about the competitive moment and start to actualize our potential in those moments and connect with each other on the sideline to will the result that we want in the end. And so that's a lot. Week 1 to week 2, we are learning how to compete and win. We're learning the detail it takes. Like I said, I felt like the effort was there. I didn't feel like there was anyone that, gave up or gave in. And yet that's not how we, mark our standards. That's just the expectation. This is about how we move our program forward, and we can do that by just taking a higher level of compete to the game on Saturday and really having fun with that competitive moment. You learn about yourself when you face that adversity. You learn about your teammates. Let's enjoy that process rather than be swallowed up by it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this conversation. So I felt like, I coach a youth baseball team, and I felt like last year at 9 years old, in kid pitch, going from coach pitch, where I was their friend pitching to them, going to kid pitch, where strangers were pitching to them. It was a big psychological game, and we had a lot of the same conversations. That's why I was fascinated with what you were saying. And I told my assistants, I was like, I feel like we should put like a white coat on, because I feel like we're doing more psychological work than we are coaching and teaching the game of baseball. But we're through all that, and we're now on the other side and going into 10U. So with that being said, I'm talking about kids, 9 and 10 years old. How do you do that at the college level?
Well, listen, we're still talking about kids, and I mean it's young people. And the other thing to understand about football is, the jump from high school to college, it's a leap.
Sure.
And there's so many variables that come into play, and most of our players have, in one way or another, been just superstars at the high school level, and many have worked really hard for that kind of competitive separation, and yet. You drop into an environment where you're right at the mean line, and you have to work to separate yourself every single day. There's a lot, I think, just in the baseline experience of movement from high school to college. There's a lot that has to be learned, and there's a lot that has to be unlearned. I think what further complicates that is just the situation we've dropped into here that requires further untangling just of past experience. And there is a psychological weight to that. But listen, guys, we have to get over that. I mean, I'm not here to talk about that as what's going to continue to plague us. My message to the team is Vanderbilt football will not be ceases to be defined by self-pity. I mean, this is about how we look each other in the eye, look at ourselves in the mirror, and understand that we controlled what happened on Saturday. It was not something that happened to us. I think we at times felt like, East Tennessee State was going to be a cooperative opponent, and that's never going to be the case. And part of learning to win is understanding how hard it is, how on point you have to be, and how, again, inevitably there's going to be adversity. It's never going to be easy. And so we prepare for those moments where we have to counterpunch, where we have to find out about ourselves, where someone has to step up and make a play. And we don't do it by pressing. We do it by defaulting to process and doing the little things at a really high level. And not to, go too long into this, but, ultimately for us, it's, our team was not met with a message, nor did I, internalize a message that said, how could this happen? Or, why did this happen? This happened for the exact reason it needed to happen. We have to learn through this. We have to grow from it, and we have to become the team that we can become. And I don't think that it's going to be able to happen here until we have stripped everything down to the studs and are willing to build it anew at every turn. And, I think in the part of this process, we're at the point now where, it's going from, being understanding and being responsive and showing up and working hard to like a deep level of belief, a deep level of awareness that we carry with us from the heart into our performance. And so that was the message of yesterday. And now today we shift focus to Colorado State, and we go at it really hard in our Tuesday practice. And it's, I think the guys are excited to do that.
Talking to Clark Lee, head football coach at Vanderbilt. And so, Coach, let's get a couple of specific areas here for you to address. It looked to me like, regardless of which quarterback was in, there were just a number of plays in the passing game, especially, where it just didn't have time to develop. So our offensive line pass protection, it looked like you had a lot of breakdowns there. Where do you start in trying to get that to the next level?
Well, I think it starts in practice, and for us, this has been an issue that we've kind of faced down in our competition against our defense, and so we have to be more demanding of protection. We have to, as players, take ownership over the communication and the techniques that allow for a firm pocket to be set, and so there were a few instances, and some of them, the free hit on Mike Wright, where we're at the 29-yard line heading in, and we got a double move call. The ball's going to go up in the end zone. Those are the kind of shots that we want to throw to Will Shepard and Chris Pierce, and to get our size of receiver going. For us to cut a single edge blitzer loose is negligence, and we have to take ownership over that and be better. That's communication lines, that's execution points. It's all doable. It's just a matter of taking the awareness. Unfortunately, now we've had to learn this through a negative result. We take the awareness that we have and we apply it to preparing with more intensity and more intentionality to ensure that we're better in those moments. But be it twist games, be it blitzes, we have to be stout and create a firm pocket so that Ken and Mike can have confidence back there to deliver the ball where they need to deliver it.
You were talking about Will Shepherd, and he jumped out at me as a guy that he got targeted a lot. And here's a guy that is playing at a position group where you have some other guys who have done some things and been around for a while, and Cam Johnson and Chris Pierce. So tell me where Shepherd has really made a jump. He looked like he's got some good tools there.
Shep, he had a spring where he kind of jumped out at us, and then sustained that through summer and fall. I think he's really come a long way. When I look at Will, I think about not just where he is, but where he's going to be. I think he's got just a really high ceiling. He's long, tall, he can run, he's going to have an opportunity to be a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands, and we hope that can make big plays for us. And in review of the game Saturday, there were times where he showed up and was able to create some pressure. I know there's some tackles that he wants to break. It's like there was a couple times where he's just one step away from springing a long one, a breakout for a touchdown, which we need. We need some explosive movement on offense. But yet there's also some nuanced technique where he can be more effective on the deep ball. He can be more effective on the post that we missed early in the game. Those are things that I think through his experience, his growth, his understanding of the game, you're going to see a playmaker develop and someone that I'm excited to watch grow. We need him to grow up fast because obviously, that level of explosiveness will help us out a lot on our offense.
You said, Clark, that you wanted to use both quarterbacks. You did. Mike Wright came in, gave you a spark. As you mentioned, he had a couple of good drives going that sort of got short-circuited there with a penalty or a sack. But given what we were talking about, the breakdowns protection-wise, do you look at that position and say kind of the same formula going into Saturday? You're going to see both guys and maybe ride the hot hand depending on the situation?
I want it to be this is Kenny's job right now. He's earned that. He's the starting quarterback. Mike is a counterpunch. He's someone that we trust, and he has a skill set that we think can be very challenging on defenses. I almost want to even make a little more distinction in how we design around both guys, so that we can further bring out their strengths, and that's something that we've talked about as an offensive staff here. But no, Ken will be the starter. We certainly, as the week goes, we plan on using Mike as well. Felt like when he came in, he did provide a little spark, but I think we can go further and again, bringing out his strengths and allowing him to impact the game, impact winning for us. He's a talented guy that has earned the right to be out there.
We're talking to Clark Lee, Vanderbilt football coach here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. And I know you mentioned this in your press conference earlier today about offensive play calling, but could you kind of take us through the setup there with having David as the OC, you have Joey Lynch as the pass game coordinator, Norvell as the run game coordinator, just kind of the breakdown of how your offensive coaches are set up and trying to deliver the message to the players as quickly as possible within a game.
Yeah, the communication lines are really they're streamlined. I mean, it's Joey's game to call. We are collaborative in our approach to develop a game plan. David Rye has his personality, his fingerprints involved in that. He and Joey have worked close together from the very beginning. I think in fall camp, it just became clear that Joey's experience gave us a little better execution point in our scrimmages. As play caller, and then also, by taking that aspect of it off David's plate, he's focused more attention to that receiver group that we need, again, to grow up fast, to become a feature in our offense. But as far as the in-game they obviously, like any offensive staff, communicate with each other, plan the next series, talk about what's working, what's not. But when it comes down to like calling the play, we've given that responsibility to Joey, and that has to do with his experience and all that he brings to the table in that respect. So that's how it works.
Gotcha. As we talk about this a lot, with hockey, and obviously it's different with road trips and you're on the road longer, but you all heading out to Colorado State, how much are you looking forward to having that opportunity to be away from everything that's here, everything that's at home, where you can just be there as a team and bond, because it's still a new team, a new coaching staff, all of those things. So how important will that aspect of the road trip be?
It's a great aspect of it. I mean, we have to be road warriors. You have to bind together and find a way to win a game in a challenging environment. There's, like you mentioned, additional time where you're in transition, on the plane, in the hotel, spending time together. We have a long day Saturday because we play at night. So, additional time in preparation and to be with each other. Now, look, it's a, like you said, it's a new team, new coaching staff. We're all getting to know each other. My goal is that, the adversity this team faces, whether in game or obviously coming out of Saturday after a disappointing result, that adversity, strengthens our bonds, that we actually tighten as a program as a result of that. And so, going on the road together is certainly a chance to kind of double down on that and to spend a little extra time together.
As we close this, I just want to get your opinion as now a head coach. You've been a defensive coordinator as well. Clearly, we're talking a lot about the targeting penalty in college football, and I understand the intent behind it. I think everybody understands the intent behind it. It's all about player safety, but it is also a controversial penalty. It's an inconsistent penalty. So looking at it from your coaching eyes, is this something, in your opinion, that you think that they need to look at, the officials need to look at, to try and make it where it's safe for the players, but also as fair of a penalty as it possibly can be?
Yeah, I think the word that you said that best describes what I feel about is just the consistency in it. I do feel like the concentration on the targeting foul has allowed us to teach and coach a certain way that does make the game safer. So I think the intention is there. It's challenging at times as a defensive player to know how to win at the point of attack. And sometimes, it's obviously you see some of those that are kind of malicious or maybe have a little more purposeful in the way their blows are delivered, but there are also some that are just competitive moments, and just allowing there to be some consistency in it so that we can coach it and teach it and the players can understand it, and that way we're not in critical situations without players that have earned the right to be in the game, and that would be my hope. And fortunately, I haven't experienced it much on my end. We've had a couple over the years, but nothing too crazy. But I know it obviously was a wild week in that respect, and it's the topic of conversation today, certainly.
Well, Clark, appreciate the time as always. Best of luck at Colorado State. We'll be watching, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks, guys. Y'all have a great day. We'll talk later.
Awesome. Clark Lee, Vanderbilt football coach, joining us here on the show as they do take on Colorado State coming up late Saturday night. And you can listen to those games on our sister station, 93.3 Classic Hits. As we go to the break, Mitch Light from The Athletic is going to join us next. Darren, tell us about DraftKings.
I will. First Sunday of the NFL season is here, and the excitement continues with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. DraftKings is giving all new customers a can't-miss offer to celebrate the return of the NFL season. All you have to do is bet $1 on any football game this weekend and receive $200 in free bets instantly, no matter what. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving all new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they just bet at least $1 on any football game. DraftKings is safe, reliable, and secure, making it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. All you have to do is download that DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code 1025GAME and receive $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any Week 1 game. That promo code again to use, 1025GAME, and get your free $200 in bets instantly. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Remember, you must be 21 years of age or older, Tennessee only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789.
Mitch Light from The Athletic coming up to talk a little more college football when we come back. In the meantime, let me tell you about Loan Pronto. Remember, mortgage rates have taken that nosedive. They're low. That means you have a great opportunity. Lowest in history. Not kidding about this. So don't miss your chance to lock in that lower house payment. That means your monthly payment is going to be down hundreds of dollars in many cases. Loan Pronto is the place to call. Or refinance and get cash out to pay off your credit cards. Use the home equity you have and get cash to pay off credit card bills, maybe do a home improvement project. Call Loan Pronto today and find out about these options. Take advantage of their super popular zero-cost refi program. You can get a rate with the APR in the low twos with no junk fees and no closing costs. Yes, they pay the closing costs. They don't roll them into the loan. They pay them. Loan Pronto's all digital access also is fast and easy. It streamlines the process. It's going to make it a lot less headache for you. So do all this. You can skip your next 2 house payments, and then long-term you're going to save a lot of money. How do you do it? Call Loan Pronto now, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com, equal housing lender. NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval. Not all loans eligible for zero-cost option.
Special thanks to Clark Lee for joining us in that last segment, Vanderbilt football coach. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on this gorgeous Tuesday afternoon here in our market. And of course, our show is presented by Rashawn CBD. Rashawn CBD, products curated for life. We now don't switch gears. We're going to keep talking college football, but we bring in Mitch Light from The Athletic. Mitch, how you doing?
Darren, I'm doing well. Hope you guys are okay.
Yeah, and I want to start with last night's game. Ole Miss cruises to a victory over Louisville without Lane Kiffin on the sidelines.
Hotty-totty.
And we had an interesting conversation with Nick Suss yesterday, who covers the team for the Clarion Ledger. And I asked him about the defense. And, last year they were basically last or right at the very end with every team in every defensive category, right? Like they're worse. They're in the 70s in defensive categories this season. Rather than a team most would project to be 6-6, if their defense has massively improved, are they a team now that can win 8 or 9 games with a better defense?
Yeah, no doubt about it. You're right. They were horrendous defensively, and one thing about Ole Miss is a team that plays so many snaps, it can be dangerous to look up their total defense. You got to look at yards per play because they're on the field for so many more time. They're on the field for so many more plays, and but they weren't good in any category last year, and it's hard to say. It's hard. You don't want to overreact. I know Louisville's not a great team, and they don't really threaten you down the field, and they've lost some skill players. But I don't care if you and there were some garbage points and garbage yards there, but they looked really good in the first 2.5, 3 quarters. That offense is really, really talented. If you can, there's just so many ways they can beat you. If you guys are watching, you could feel like Kirk Herbstreit's pain because he wanted to diagnose and tell us why Ole Miss was so good offensively and what they were doing, but they couldn't figure out how to get replays in because the Ole Miss plays at such a frenetic pace. I thought that was kind of funny there. So, yeah, the schedule's very difficult. We know life in the SEC West is difficult, but, look what they did to Alabama last year. They're, one of the few teams to move the ball consistently. So I think Matt Corral is fantastic. I followed they've recruited very well at the running back position. They've got guys different sizes. They can do different things. So, Darren, I think Ole Miss is one of the more intriguing teams, not just in the league, but in the country.
Well, you're right about Kirk Herbstreit. He was definitely frustrated last night. He kept referencing it over and over again.
Yeah. Sorry, Darren. I think they made an adjustment at halftime as a crew. I did notice, not like I was charting it, but I did notice they did show more replays in the third quarter than they did in the first half.
You're right about that. You're absolutely right about that. Not a good weekend for the showing of the ACC or lack of for the first week of college football.
Yeah, obviously not great. Clemson, there's no shame in losing to North Carolina. And while North Carolina lost to another ACC team, so you can argue it's not bad for the league, when you have a top 10 team, you probably, if you're the commissioner, if you're Jim Phillips, you probably want North Carolina to win that game. Now, I think it's good for college football that Virginia Tech wins a big game like that. It was a fun game to watch. Florida State looks maybe a little bit, they're definitely improved. They look better than maybe expected. NC State with a nice win against probably a bad South Florida team, but very resounding. But then, Georgia Tech loses at home to Northern Illinois. And this is not the Northern Illinois team of 5-10 years ago. They were one of the worst teams in the MAC in recent years. So that was a bad loss. Duke losing to Charlotte is a bad loss. Louisville obviously didn't look great there. Miami, I'm not going to ding Miami for losing that bad to Alabama, but they're not a great weekend for the ACC.
Yep, no doubt about it. What stood out to you in the SEC? Take that wherever you want, but what stood out to you? What got your attention? Is it the LSU loss to UCLA? Is it the Vanderbilt loss to ETS? You take it however you want. It could be a good thing too. I don't know.
Yeah, not too much was that. Obviously Vanderbilt losing was not a good sign for Vanderbilt. It doesn't really affect the league because Vanderbilt, was not expected to be, relevant in the league this year. I think LSU losing is not great. It's not great. It's not great for the person. It's not great for the most is Ed Ogeron, obviously. But if LSU goes on and threatens Alabama and Texas A&M, it's probably that people nationally will hold that against the SEC. Just sort of like a few years ago when a mediocre Auburn team, well not mediocre, but not a vintage Auburn team went out and beat Oregon early in the year. That people held that against Oregon. So conversely, ideally for the SEC, it's probably great if LSU doesn't have a great year. If they're third or fourth in the league by that. We're all overreacting to one game. Arkansas fumbled around against Rice a little bit, but really, played well in the fourth quarter. And covered the spread by I think 1 point. Mississippi State with an impressive rally. I watched a decent amount of that game, and then they were left. I left them for dead, and then I saw on Twitter they were coming back, so I watched the end of that game. That was almost like a college basketball game with momentum swings in there. South Carolina, obviously, Eastern Illinois is not a good team, but in Shane Beamer's debut, they took care of business with Zeb Noland, a sixth-year senior coach at quarterback. So I think we've got Kentucky, Missouri's huge, obviously this week, but not a ton, last week to really caught my attention. I guess Florida maybe potential quarterback situation there. Anthony Richardson, the backup, I didn't see hardly into that game. Was really good there, and Dan Mullen's trying to defuse the situation. So that's something to watch going forward.
Talking to Mitch Light from The Athletic. So, Mitch, as we look ahead, let's look at two teams that people probably don't watch play a whole lot around here, but it's the next opponent for Tennessee and Vanderbilt. Give us a couple of things that we need to know. Let's start with Pittsburgh.
Very good defensively, and I'm not just saying that because it's Pat Narduzzi, he's a defensive coach, and watch out for them. They led the nation last year in a stat called havoc rate, which is basically interceptions, tackles for losses, sacks, forced fumbles. Basically, anytime you do something defensively that wreaks havoc on the offense. 22.4% of their defensive snaps were a havoc play, which is outstanding if you think about it, almost one quarter. And then part of that is tackles for loss, like I said. They led the nation in tackles for loss, 111. So a very aggressive defense. They went 5-5 last year in the ACC, lost 2 games by 1 point, one at BC in overtime, one at Miami. So it's a solid team. This is it's sort of like a program game for Tennessee. You find out where the program is, and this year in year one of Josh Heupel, I'd say there's no shame in losing to Pitt at home. But big picture, this is a game Tennessee as a program shouldn't lose. I'm kind of contradicting myself there. So I think it's a nice barometer game. It'd be a nice statement if they won. Kenny Pickett, their quarterback, is good, not great. He's one of those guys that burst onto the scene as a true freshman. I think he had a big game against Miami 4 years ago, and he's been okay, but he's just one of those guys who seems like he's been around forever, hasn't really gotten that much better. So I think the spread was 2 when it came out. Pitt may be favored. Interesting barometer game for both programs. Hey, Pitt can go on the road and win in a hostile SEC environment. We just talked about the ACC not looking great. That would be a nice win for that league.
So with that in mind, let's now look at Vanderbilt's opponent in Colorado State. What's the matchup looking like there, knowing that Vanderbilt's got nowhere to go but up?
Yeah, well, neither does Colorado State. They lost in week 1 to South Dakota State, which is, historically a very good FCS program, but they got beaten pretty badly. Very curious hire. Steve Adazio was 2 years ago. Wasn't bad at Boston College. I think they might have gone 7-6 for 4 or 5 years in a row, but it wasn't necessarily a hot commodity. You think of Adazio, he's at Florida, Temple. I think he's a Syracuse alum maybe. East Coast guy goes out there. 1-3 last year in a shortened season, so hard to draw many conclusions from that. But we have some guys on our staff here who have access to a lot of historical records and basically results going back for decades. And I asked, is this the first time that 2 FBS teams, which lost to FCS teams in week 1, are playing each other in week 2? And my response was, that would be a real pain to look up. Translation, I'm not looking that up. was the response I got there. So, on paper, before the season, this was a game you probably said Vanderbilt has a really good chance of winning. You watched Vanderbilt the other day, you're probably not feeling that way. If you're a Colorado State fan, you're probably thinking the same thing. It's like, hey, my team lost at home to South Dakota State. I'm not too confident. Someone's going to win the game, and I'm sure you guys just talked to Clark Lee. I'm, just like you guys, interested to see what the response is in week 2 after such a poor performance in week 1.
I don't know how much you got the chance to see it. I know you were watching a number of different games, but Mitch, I'm just curious. I think you knew that the talent issue in terms of game breakers on both sides of the ball, that was going to be something that they're going to have to deal with. They don't have enough of those guys. They're not going to until they can recruit some more guys or find a few transfers, etc. But the execution, the scheme, that was what was just jumped out to me. And the level of lack of physical being able to just overwhelm ETSU is just alarming.
Yeah, well, especially since 2 years ago when the Vanderbilt team that really struggled. And I know ETSU is probably a lot better. They had a good spring season. They're better than they were 2 years ago. But Vanderbilt overwhelmed ETSU at the line of scrimmage 2 years ago. And, I think they might have had 110 total yards of offense. So it was a far cry from that. So, yeah, I think that was one of many concerns there, the physicality at the line of scrimmage. And you, like you said, Willie, this Vanderbilt team doesn't have a lot of game breakers. They got some quality receivers who can catch the ball, but no one really to make that big play. In theory, you'd like to think that, okay, you don't have any game breakers at the SEC level, but they should be able to do it against an opponent like ETSU, but that wasn't the case there. So when you don't make big plays on the field, you got to control the line of scrimmage, and Vanderbilt didn't do that either. So that was a recipe for not scoring a lot of points, and then mistakes. Had a lot of holding penalties, which is a result of, getting beaten at the line of scrimmage. And then Tyler Steen, illegal man downfield on a touchdown. If you score that, maybe the game's a little bit different there. Just lack of execution / physicality at the line, and then too many penalties, obviously spelled trouble for Vanderbilt.
We're talking to Mitch Light from The Athletic here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. And, as you talked about the ACC and their struggles, one of those teams was Duke losing to Charlotte. And we got to know Will Healy quite a bit when he was here at Austin Peay. And I've watched what he did at Austin Peay, what he's now done at Charlotte. Is that a name that people need to pay attention to? It's probably going to be out there for some bigger jobs this year, most likely?
Sure. Sure. He was obviously, I think, Vanderbilt. I don't know how serious it got, but was a guy that he looked at. I made the comment, I don't know if I tweeted out to a friend or texted someone, I said, Will Healy could be coaching Duke next year. We all think that David Cutcliffe's obviously had a great career, but there was rumors he might retire this year. Clearly a guy who knows how to build a program and build a culture. After I said, I don't know how great of a fit he is at Duke, he takes a lot of transfers. Not that you can't take transfers at Duke or an quote-unquote academic school, but you're not going to take as many there. I don't think I've got no problem with his style. I don't think his style's a fit everywhere, the rah-rah type thing. Some of the more established programs might kind of look down on that, but there's no doubt the guy knows how to coach. And here's a thing. He obviously did a great job rebuilding Austin Peay. You know what his record was in year one at Austin Peay?
Did not win a game.
Nope.
0-11. Yeah. So it tells you, there's very few very quick fixes in college football, and that's why the thing about Will Healy is when people were floating him out there for Vanderbilt or other jobs, some people would look at his overall record. I was like, well, you can't look at his overall record. That Austin Peay program when he took over was horrible, and Vanderbilt played them twice when I was doing sideline duty, and I get down there and you can really see the quality of players, and Vanderbilt beat them badly twice, and I was shocked about, quite frankly, how bad those Austin Peay teams were. So Will Healy takes over a bad team, goes 0-11. When you haven't been a head coach for very long, it's hard to get on the right side of 500 when you start 0-11 there. So that's just kind of a big picture thing. When you're looking at coaching resumes, sometimes the overall record, it might be hard to sell to a fan base. Oh, we hired a coach who's 500. Well, you got to dive in and really see what he did and where he started.
Oregon won. They're 1-0, but they had a tough time with Fresno. Fresno put up a fight. Now they go to the Shoe to take on Ohio State. Ohio State coming in as a 14.5-point favorite. What do you think of the Ducks right now as they go into Columbus to take on the Buckeyes?
Well, like about 99.7% of the world, I don't get the Pac-12 network. So I did not. I kept trying to flip over to that game when it was tight, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's on the Pac-12.
You mean with your high-tech abilities, Mitch, and your status at The Athletic, you can't find a way to get that done?
I'm just a common man, Willie, and who has DirecTV here.
Okay.
So just I get whatever I can.
Talk to your people. Talk to your superiors at the. Talk to Rexroad. Can Rexroad help you out with this? He knows people.
Rexroad and technology, sure. I'm sure those two go together. But so yeah, I know this Oregon team. Obviously, the big news there was Kayvon Thibodeau, their All-American defensive end. It looks like he got hurt. Looks like he's going to play. Anthony Brown, the quarterback, is a sixth-year senior, started parts of 3 seasons at Boston College, a good player. I don't know if he's a national championship level quarterback or a playoff caliber quarterback. I'm sure we all watched the Ohio State-Minnesota game. I just talked about making big plays and having explosive athletes. There's a team that has explosive athletes. I mean, that wide receiving core is absurd. Just look how good they are out there. Their number one, Alabama's number one wide receiver, or potential number one wide receiver, is a Ohio State cast-off. So they can score in bunches. I'll be interested to see if Oregon can do anything defensively to kind of confuse C.J. Stroud. It's only his second career game. If Thibodeau's healthy and they can put some pressure on him and force him to make some mistakes. He's not quite the runner that Justin Fields was. They'd like to keep him back more in the pocket there. So I think that's the recipe for Oregon. But I think Ohio State, too many weapons. The 14.5 seems, I don't know if it seems high. I don't know if I'd pick Ohio State to cover, but I like the Buckeyes to win.
Going to be an interesting week 2 of college football after a fun week 1. Mitch, appreciate the time as always. We will do it again next week.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
Mitch Light of The Athletic joins us every Tuesday. Light after Lee, I guess is what we're calling it.
The light after Lee.
I like that. That's
okay.
good. That's
we're shedding light on the situation.
Yep. Wow. Dad joke. We will come back, wrap up today's show. But first, Willie, you're going to tell us about loans once again.
Hey, if you're living in our listening area, you know that your home value is way up. That's one of the benefits of living in our city. Home values are great right now. And so one of the options you have right now that Loan Pronto wants you to know about is that with mortgage rates at all-time lows, it's a great time to call Loan Pronto, refinance, and get cash out of your home's equity. You can use that cash if you need it right now for something. Maybe you want to do a home improvement project, reinvest in your home, make it even more valuable. Or if you want to consolidate some debt, you can do either of those things. You can get $40,000, $50,000 out if you call Loan Pronto now. Take advantage of the situation now before it changes with the mortgage rates. Call 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Their all-digital platform makes it fast and easy. And if you act now, you can skip your next 2 house payments for a refi, or you can get that cash out to consolidate debt, get rid of PMI, or use it to make your home even more valuable with that home improvement project you've been dreaming about. 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender. NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval. Not all loans eligible for zero-cost option.
Hey, goodbye. Hey, don't forget, NFL fans, don't miss our pregame show from Rock Bottom Brewery in downtown Nashville this Sunday. Yeah, we know the Titans are hosting the Cardinals. And you've got an opportunity from 9:30 until 11:30 a.m. at Rock Bottom Brewery on Broadway, prior to the Titans taking on the Cardinals, to hang out, have some fun before you head over to Nissan Stadium. Listen to the pregame show with Jared and Mark and forever Titan Chris Sanders. NFL pregame show brought to you by TriStar Moving, Parman Tractor and Equipment, FreedomTireGuys.com, FanDuel, E2 Roofing, Hillside Medical, Social Furniture, and Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey.
I love that.
Haven't had that.
Oh, really?
No.
That I have not.
You need to try it, my friend.
Haven't had that.
I highly recommend it.
Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued.
It's good.
You have me attention. You have my attention. Or me attention.
Whichever.
Oh, me, oh, my.
Sounds so good. Turn Darren into a caveman.
You had me at peanut butter and whiskey. And Screwball, That's all good. So check that out on Sunday as we get a little bit closer. NFL season will begin Thursday night with the Bucs and the Cowboys. The NCAA football schedule, there's not really a great...
Not as juicy as last week.
Yeah, I don't think week 2 is going to present the juicy matchups, as you said. Does anybody... So I know Mitch touched on it. Did he say Thibodeau is going to play? The big for Oregon. Their big stud.
I think
on
he said
defense.
he's expected to play.
Yeah.
He
was in a boot.
Word.
Okay. They don't have Thibodeau. I don't think they got a chance. Don't think they have a chance. But I'm trying to think of what is the marquee game? That's got 2 ranked teams, but does anybody? It's in Columbus. If it was in Eugene, that would feel differently, right? But give me another game that is in that same category.
Washington and Michigan could have been fun. If
Washington could have been if they didn't lose to an FCS school.
I know this isn't considered marquee, but I feel like Stanford USC is always interesting, even when neither team is good.
What happened to David Shaw? Remember when he was the hot ticket, the hot name for every opening? That Stanford job's been pretty quiet for a while, hasn't it? All the sexiness around David Shaw.
Very
you
hard.
Turn stuff down enough, though.
And also, just think about it. You had 2 extremely special players, and Andrew Luck and then Christian McCaffrey. It's just hard to keep getting that type of player at Stanford year in and year out. You're bound to have some cycles there.
And they had some tight ends that went to the league.
Oh, they had a lot of good players. A lot of good players. It wasn't just those guys. But what I'm saying
Sundays.
is you're going to have some good runs at Stanford, but year in, year out to be really, really good as they were when they had those guys, Rose Bowl kind of stuff, I think that's hard to – it's not like they've been awful. They just become more like a Northwestern, kind of hanging in there, winning a few – eke out 6-7 wins, and then if they get a special player like that, then you can elevate some.
Which is why I've always said, strike while the iron's hot. But I guess David Shaw doesn't want to go anywhere.
Guy. He's a Stanford guy.
I guess he doesn't want to go anywhere, so that's fine.
Wanted to be there.
That's fine.
Iowa State could be interesting.
I was getting ready to bring that one up. That one is in the middle of the day, the ABC game, Iowa State. That's intriguing, although – a lot of hype around Iowa State, and so far they didn't look great coming out of the gates. But they got to win. But I don't know. We'll see. 4.5, I think, is the line I remember looking at. That should be a good one.
You are correct. 4.5. In Ames.
That one, you're right. It's in Ames. So that once again, I'd rather – I guess – I don't know. That's an intriguing one. That definitely belongs on the list. But that's kind of what we're looking at. I know. That's really about Mississippi State, NC State,
maybe Texas, Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Sure, that's a Saturday night game on ESPN.
Arkansas is intriguing.
NSC
they actually have a lot of pretty good talent. The wide receiver core is pretty good. I think get the QB situation figured out. I think they can give Texas a run.
Texas giving up 6.5 on the road.
Yeah.
Seems about right.
Missouri at Kentucky. Let's see what we got. The 2 1-0 teams. Let's see what happens there.
You've brought up my LSU love. I've been out on the LSU bandwagon.
How you feel about that these days? Still good?
One game, but not as good as I mean, listen, I'm eating some crow on my Chip Kelly comments.
I was going to say.
I'm eating some crow on hating on Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
So, as he said, it's 2-0. Caroline's in studio. I'm sorry we're talking about this right now. But I'm still – let's see how it all shakes out with the Tigers. But I'm also, Darren, I'm on the Kentucky bandwagon. I picked them to finish second in the East. So I think Kentucky could be sneaky good.
Okay.
So I'm curious of that game with Missouri.
Kentucky's, I think, a 5-point favorite.
Yes, sir.
Here's another big one Saturday night on ESPN. In all seriousness, because it is a huge rivalry game. Usually something crazy happens in the stands because the fans are a little juiced. BYU, Utah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one. Although Utah's had their number. I think they've won like 9 or 10 in a row, which is hard to believe. Remember Zach Wilson? He's number 2 pick in the draft. But Utah's won. They've had their way. But that's always a good one. And it's at BYU. So that's really
intriguing. Yeah. But I feel like week one always comes in with a bang because we're all just thirsty for college football.
And that they should, because the NFL hasn't started, and they should do it that way.
Take advantage of it. And then they dial it back. Week 2's not as good because that's the NFL's weekend.
The NFL is going to reign supreme this weekend.
Even though they're not on the same day, it's just you kind of acknowledge that the NFL. This is the NFL's week as they kick off their season, and then things pick back up again. I mean, that's just how it is. So,
by the way, no Thursday night game. Is that?
Yeah, they usually do that because of the NFL kickoff.
But they usually don't do the Thursday night game.
Yeah,
okay. So it'll pick up next week.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Nate, I'm not using that phrase. I used it one time yesterday, and I'm not using that phrase again. He just texted in saying what I need to do about LSU, and I'm not using that phrase.
Okay.
It's been retired. It's been retired for the week.
Part of the art of doing a sports talk show 4 hours a day, every day for a long time, you got to figure out different ways to say the same thing.
Yeah.
So you don't want to pump the brakes on LSU.
No. He's not using that term.
And I'm not using that term.
He's not using that term.
Okay.
He might chill.
Go Tigers.
He might chill, but he may not pump the brakes. He might ease up.
Ease up. Tap. How about tap?
I'll engine brake. Do that.
Slow the vehicle down.
Throw it neutral.
Yeah.
Engine brake. All right. That will do it for our show on this Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day here in Music City. Be safe. We want you back with us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Stay tuned. Stillman and Company's next.